This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, recording is started. You can go ahead, Dan, whenever you're ready.
All right, so it is 6:01-ish, and this is the July 24th, 2023 meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. We are now being recorded. Are we?
Yes, we are.
We are. All right, so now I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs here, I think. So this meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission will be conducted in person and simultaneously by a remote participation online to the greatest extent possible. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite the best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur in which the online meeting ends abruptly, both in-person and online meetings will not be restarted, and all agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting.
Okay, just a couple of notes before we carry on, just for the folks attending online. There, as Dan said, if there's any issues with the online proceedings, we'll pause everything here in person and continue everything to the next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for August 14th at 6 p.m. And you can reach out to me, the conservation agent, if you have any questions at 413-529-1463 or conservation@easthamptonma.gov. The next item is that all online participants are asked to remain muted with cameras off until it's time for public comments, as indicated by the chair. Participants should use the raise hand function located at the center console for the Google Meet function here. Use the raise hand function to indicate that you want to make a comment and be entered into the queue for that. Please state your name for the record at the beginning of any comments. Typically, all comments are allowed 5 minutes per comment at the discretion of the chair. After 5 minutes, you want to make more comments, you're welcome to. Just get back in line so we can make sure everyone gets a chance. And let's see, the last piece is, please, for those online, please do not utilize the chat function unless it's necessary to indicate to the agent that you'd like to make a comment or if you're experiencing any kind of technical difficulties. All private chats are generated into a transcript that will be included in the public record and are not, in fact, private. So discussion within the chat is prohibited. So thank you all for being understanding of that. And now I'll turn it back to you, Dan. We can carry on.
All right. So before we get started on public hearings and other things, are there any public concerns or non-agenda items that anyone is looking to bring to our attention?
I haven't received any. Seems like most people likely are here for an item that's already on the agenda.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then folks online, if anyone here is here for something that's not on the agenda, you can raise your hand now. Not seeing any.
All right. Hearing nothing, we shall move into public hearings and meetings. So first on the docket is a public hearing, a notice of intent filed by Furrow Engineering on behalf of Tasty Top Development LLC for a new mixed-use commercial and residential development with associated stormwater management system at 93, 95, and 97 Northampton Street, which is map 128, lot 112, 113, and 114. Request filed on November 23rd, 2022, Mass DP file number 151322.
Hey, so for the commission, I'll note that there is not a representative for this here tonight from the applicant side of things, which is not surprising in that we did not yet have the submission of their response to the initial review completed by the peer reviewer. Once that's received, it'll get posted on the city website for folks to see, and then also will be sent to Beals and Thomas, the peer reviewer, to begin their rebuttal again to their rebuttal. So I will share that to everybody as soon as it's received, but there isn't necessarily a due date for that. It's in their best interest to submit that as soon as possible. The other piece, though, that I was hoping that the commission could consider discussing tonight would be review of the comment letter that the commission has previously indicated they'd like to submit for the MEPA review process, which is a state review process that the commission does not have control over, but has the opportunity to share information for. There was a public virtual comment session held by the MEPA office recently. I want to say that was on the 21st. I can double check that, but in which the public can attend and then other agencies and city officials we go to. I did not make our public comment because I wanted to confer with you guys, make sure that that is what you guys want it to be as a written comment. But there was some confusion. I was able to get a lot of information based off of what it seemed like other state agencies wanted to see or gaps in information that might need to be filled. That's what I focused on putting in the content of the letter that I drafted for you all to see tonight. In the folder there's 5 copies. If people want to look at that, but I've shared that with you ahead of time. So some people might already have comments ready to go or edits that they want. And then after we talk about this, I would ask the chair to open it for public comment. If there's additional public comments people want to make today, those of course will be shared with the applicant, even though there isn't a representative here today.
Sure. And you attended that MIPA
I did.
Meeting?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to give us a little summary or
Yeah, I will. So, best that I can. So it's basically an opportunity for the other state agencies like DEP or I know there was someone there, I think representing a federally recognized Native tribe. There was other state agencies. I don't know if anyone from MassDOT was there. I can't remember exactly, but and then members of the public certainly too can come. And I know some folks from PCT were there as well, Wisconsin Conservation Trust. And then myself and City Planner Jeff Bagg went also, and City Engineer Dan Murphy was also there. So the Commission's strategy thus forward is to try to get that information, and then we're preparing this written comment that's before you. There was, in terms of things that were relevant to the Conservation Commission that was discussed at that meeting, there was a point where there was some confusion about how the crossing, the existing unpermitted crossing would be used during construction. And it was thought that it wouldn't be used at all, or that it would be used for constructing the rest of the project. But what the commission has settled on since their review of the enforcement order is that the commission agreed to allow the unpermitted crossing to remain for a period of 2 years. If the project goes forward within those 2 years, they can use the unpermitted crossing to build the new crossing. And that is it. You cannot use it to build the whole construction project. The new crossing must be completed within the first phase of construction, which will likely be a condition of the order of conditions should the commission issue one. So that was like a point of clarity that I did make at the meeting that I also was going to include in the comment letter, but it felt appropriate to kind of note that at the meeting as well.
I see. So that was when the applicant was presenting the project. There were questions from the agencies. It was not clear what the intent of that was, but then you clarified it.
Yes. And there seemed to generally be a desire for more information related to the enforcement order and things like that. So my plan, I adjusted the comment letter to give a more explicit explanation of what the current status of that is. And then also my plan is to add those restoration plans as an attachment to the comment letter. So they will have explicitly what the plan is for that enforcement order available to them through our letter. And trying to think what else. I don't know, Commissioner August, I know you were there. Does that sound like a good summary of the points relevant to the commission? With my letter, my focus was trying to explain the current status of the hearing process with the Conservation Commission for this project. So it's under peer review. We've gotten the initial response. We're waiting for this. There's a chance to change it. The plan may change as a result of this peer review. It's not clear yet that we have certainly don't have the final plan yet. And the other piece was that the history of the property in regards to its dealings with the Conservation Commission, including the order of resource area delineation that was issued in 2005, the enforcement order, and now this notice of intent, and all the details of that enforcement order as well. And then the last piece is that I wanted to try to capture is that we've received numerous comments to the commission from the public, and there's been a high volume of public participation. That should be made clear. And a lot of the comments that we've received are, related to things that deal with the ecology and the environment, and things that, generally the commission is concerned about, but are outside the commission's jurisdiction and purview in a technical sense underneath the Wetlands Protection Act. And so trying to find a way to appropriately highlight that has been happening and capture and make them aware of that. I've noted in there that if they want copies of any of that, it's all available. And then also all the minutes and everything will be available to them as well if they request it. But generally highlighting that seemed to be the overarching feeling from some of the comments we've got, is concern about wildlife and the ecology of the area beyond our jurisdiction or the commission's jurisdiction to include for any order of conditions that could be issued. So I want to make sure that was done appropriately in a way that made sense to the commission. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I think the way I see it is that, we've been getting a lot of comments to deal with the ecology of the upland areas of the site and wildlife and all kinds of different things, which the Conservation Commission is kind of like the logical spot for the public to go to with those kinds of concerns. But at the same time, those kind of concerns are out of our purview as the regulator of the wetlands resource areas. And I'm talking about like upland, upland areas and habitats and those kinds of things outside the buffer and such. So I don't think we could comment on those areas that are outside of our area of responsibility, but we can certainly indicate that there has been a lot of public attention and concern with these areas in our letter.
Okay. I don't know what the best way to proceed. I also got a comment. So obviously the normal chair, Julie Booth, is not here. She was able to give me a comment that she had for the letter. You want to read that first? Or I can just read the letter as it is now, and then we can go from there. Or
is there a comment adding to the
yes, letter? Yes. So do you want to read that first? What you wanted to add, or?
Do you have to read the whole thing anyway? The public record?
Oh, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to read the whole thing, and then we can talk about edits and what Julie suggested or whatever.
Okay, so this is the MIPA review ENF comment letter regarding Sierra Vista Commons -EEA number 16729. That's how they keep track of their files. For 93, 95, 97 Northampton Street, addressed to Nicholas Marino, who's kind of like their main staff person managing this. Dear Marino, I am writing on behalf of the Easthampton Conservation Commission, the commission, to share information as to the status of the Notice of Intent, NOI, filed by Tasty Top Development LLC, Mass DEP file number 151-0322 at 9395 97 Northampton Street for a new residential and commercial development. The public hearing for this project began on December 12, 2022, and is currently still underway. Under the Wetlands Protection Act, the current proposed plan includes impacts to jurisdictional areas, including the 100-foot buffer zone, installation of a new stream crossing, and new stormwater management system. In addition to the review underway for compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act, the commission is also reviewing the project for compliance with the City Stormwater Management Ordinance, also known as Article 7, within the same hearing process. The project is currently undergoing peer review by the consulting firm Beals & Thomas Incorporated, and for which the reviewer has completed the initial review at this stage. See Attachment A. In addition to confirmation of compliance with all aspects of the Wetlands Protection Act and the City Stormwater Management Ordinance, the Commission is particularly still working to determine the compliance of the stormwater management system and future slope stability due to tree removal and stormwater abatement like locations last designed. It has also not yet been determined whether the peer review will result in any changes to the plan design before the issuance of the order of conditions. The history of the property in regards to interactions with the Commission includes the following. The property received an order of resource area delineation in 2005, extended in 2008. In June 2022, the Commission issued an enforcement order for unpermitted activities related to fill within the 100-foot buffer zone, historic fill within the bordering vegetated wetlands, BVW, likely due to past unpermitted agricultural activities, and installation of an unpermitted stream crossing, which does not meet the stream crossing standards. As part of the enforcement order investigation, a peer review of a portion of the wetlands delineation was completed by Stockman Associates and incorporated in the wetlands delineation submitted with the current Notice of Intent application. A restoration plan for the area of fill within the 100-foot buffer zone and the BVW has been approved by the Commission, which includes restoration of the aforementioned historically filled BVW area, see attachment B, and is set to begin in September of this year. The Commission has also approved a separate restoration plan for the removal of the unpermitted crossing and restoration of those related impacted jurisdictional areas. This includes invasive species removal from the surrounding wooded area that is currently underway, unpermitted crossing removal within 2 years, and bank/BVW restoration, see attachment C and D. The property owner requested that the unpermitted crossing be allowed to remain for a period of 2 years so that it may be utilized for the construction of the new crossing proposed as part of the NOI application. Execution of both restoration plans is currently ongoing, and the enforcement order has not yet been confirmed as a result. For the current NOI hearing. There has been significant public participation in the process, including the submission of numerous written comments and consistent public attendance of the meetings at which numerous public comments have also been made in person. Comment letters and minutes available upon request. These comments have included concerns that are related to potential negative environmental and ecological impacts, particularly to wildlife, from the project that are not within the jurisdiction of the Commission's review under the Wetlands Protection Act. The Commission also recognizes that it is typically preferred, but not required, that the MEPA review process be completed before the issuance of an order of conditions. The Commission requests that the MEPA office share the outcome of its review process with the Commission so that they may incorporate its findings in the Commission's hearing process. The Commission also requests that the MEPA office include considerations in their review for possible negative impacts to wildlife, downstream areas, and any other environmental impacts beyond the Commission's jurisdiction. At their July 24th, 2023 meeting, the Commission voted to issue this comment letter for consideration at the MEPA review process. The Commission can be contacted through the Conservation Agent at 413-529-1463 or by email at conservation@easthamptonma.gov. If you have any additional questions related to the Commission's ongoing review of this application or would like to request any additional documentation, please contact the Conservation Agent. And if you want, I can read what Julie had suggested adding. If you're ready. Okay. So this is something I got from her by email earlier today. Okay, Cassie, after the sentence about issues beyond our jurisdiction, I would recommend adding something to the effect of, while many of these issues are beyond the Conservation Commission's purview, MEPA has broad jurisdiction over the environmental impacts of this project. We have directed concerned citizens toward the MEPA process as a means of addressing topics we cannot address through a review under the Wetlands Protection Act. And therefore, on behalf of the citizens of Easthampton, we urge your careful consideration of these questions and comments to ensure a thorough examination of environmental impacts. Excuse me. And it sounded like she thought it would be logical to include that likely in the second to last paragraph. Seems like, yeah.
Why wouldn't we include public's comment?
We can attach whatever we want. It just would be many pages of public comments. And many people are encouraged to submit their own public comments that may be quite similar already to the MEPA process. So that's why I kind of wanted to give them the opportunity to request it if they like. But I can outline like the number. I've already before calculated the number of comments that I've received, the number of pages, and can include that information in there so that they just get an idea of how many. But I didn't want to try to rehash people's specific comments because I didn't want to misrepresent any of those comments, and make sure that it was kind of broad and overarching, getting the idea that there are concerns beyond our purview that should be considered, if that makes sense. But in a tactful way and is still compliant with what the Commission can do.
Yeah, to me, it seems like we've gotten a lot of written comments and we've also gotten a lot of comments during meetings. And we would only really be able to forward along written comments and then
the minutes of the meetings,
minutes, I guess.
Or recordings if they'd like are available to them. But
yep. Yeah.
Will they typically request?
I couldn't say.
I wonder if, you're sending it digitally, so it's really just a cut and paste. I wonder if adding it on, so they can even just see the sheer volume of them. And then,
so cutting and pasting, do you mean like a link to?
well, when you send this comment letter to say attached to this is 10 pages.
It's going to be a PDF, yeah, of probably.
That
It would be much more than 10 pages. But I'm sorry, it's just that I think
I just pulled that number out of the air.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
So
We have a OneDrive with all those comments?
they're all saved. They're all saved in the file. So I can send them a link in this letter to all the Commission's files. Certainly we could do that. So they just have access
It would
to
be a lot
it.
of work for you. If you do this. I think the cut and paste was or copy and paste from the minutes so that they could see the verbal links of it.
It would be,
Without having to go through all of it.
Yeah. It would be a lot. It would be a lot of work, but I'm willing to do it, of course. It would make the comment letter very, very long. Like I would say approaching, I don't think it would be crazy to say approaching 50 pages. So we want it to be effective.
Well, we have OneDrive, right, for all the meeting minutes, don't we?
Yeah.
Why don't we just provide one?
It's up to you guys.
I don't think they'd be provided, I don't think they'd be entered into the record the same way that if they were attached to it.
That's probably true.
Would a link be entered into that?
It would be included in this letter. So it would be included in the record.
Let's
The link.
cut and paste the verbal comments. The written ones are already on the city's website.
Correct.
There's a link to them.
Yep.
So we could cut and paste, copy and paste the verbal ones.
Yep.
Onto that link. And they'd have a link to all of them.
Yeah, we could do that too.
If you, I don't know if you have time, I know you're wicked busy this summer.
See, the comment letter is due August 9th. And I mentioned, that was the thing I mentioned at the meeting, the MIPA meeting, was that the commission recommended that they consider an extension of the comment period, but I've not got a notification that it's been extended. So I'm operating in the assumption that we want to get it in by the 9th. But I think that should be attainable.
There's probably no harm in including comments we've received in the minutes, you know, I mean,
Yeah, it makes more sense now after Julie's comments.
my inclination is that maybe they won't be read as in as much detail as comments directly to MIPA would be read, but then they'll still be there, you know, if you want to see them. But if anybody has comments, so the MIPA comment deadline is, you just said
August 9th.
9, and anyone
Yeah.
here would be allowed to provide comments if they chose.
Absolutely.
Include it just in case people's comments don't address the previous ones that were submitted.
Okay.
I don't think everybody's aware of all the differences between the different jurisdictional bodies. They might have commented one place and they think that they've already commented, you know, that they need to do.
It's a lot.
So then how exactly are you doing it? You're gonna send the comment letter.
Yeah.
And then you're linking everything.
Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to clarify. So it sounded like there's two options. I can, in this letter, in the body of the letter, include a link to a folder that will have everything. All the written comments that we've received and all the minutes that include a summary of the verbal comments that we've received. And then, or what I could do is, in what I was going to do for this, right? It'll be the first page is this document. And then within that same PDF will be the attachments I described, the initial review, the restoration plan, the other restoration, or all the restoration plans for the enforcement order. And then in that same document will be all the comments, basically all the written ones in order that they've been received. And then all the, like clipped out all the verbal comments from the minutes, the summaries that I've created in the minutes. And so those are kind of the two ways I would think to approach it. It's like,
I think that's the best thing to do, you know, big giant PDF with everything.
Okay.
Coming in there.
okay. One PDF. I can do that very much so.
It doesn't take too long, but
I know, I really shouldn't. It's just, you know, it's more just like doing it through, I have like a tool that I can use to do it on PDF, and it's good to, you know, keep everything organized. So it makes sense.
Yep.
And what else?
discussion
Yes.
on the content of the letter.
Yeah.
I think I'm fine with the content plus Julie's addition. I think it all sounds good to me.
Also, good,
Likewise.
well written.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for getting that together.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll put in Julie's addition. Just generally, it sounds like we agree somewhere in that second to last paragraph. I'll try to make it logical. Where
I have one question. When you were
Yes.
explaining the order of resource area to the delineation in 2005, is that, do we want to say anything about there was a stop and shop proposal that didn't happen? Or
I don't know.
that history or-
I think that in a technical sense, that was not brought before the Conservation Commission because they were able to avoid any impacts, or their assertion was that they were avoiding impacts to jurisdictional areas. So I don't have anything in on my files for that having come to us. So my thought is that I don't have any more information to give them on that.
You
So
said stop and shop didn't happen. didn't have anything to do with conservation area.
As far as I know, it's before my time, but that's my understanding. And I think it would be logical for us to keep it to the Conservation Commission. And I think it will be captured through the planning board's comment letter if they should choose to submit one. So that might make more sense in that way. And yeah, that's my thought. Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'm thinking we could ask for public comments right now on the letter and then vote on the letter and then more public comments on the project, or if there's anything the public would like to add, or with the best procedure.
That's a good question.
In like 6 years.
Oh, that's a good question. So it does seem like there's maybe like two categories of public comments that I would expect is people wanting to give comments about the letter and then also generally about the project. I also have some written comments to read that I've received since the last meeting, but those are general. They don't pertain to NEPA necessarily explicitly. So I think it would make sense to ask if people are willing, if you have a comment related to the comment letter, try to go first, and then we'll come back and do more.
Sure. So does anyone in attendance have questions or comments on the comment letter that we've been discussing?
And just remember to state your name for the record when you're called on. So
Lucille Costick, Plymouth Avenue, living in the abutting neighborhood to this proposed project. I didn't hear anything in the letter in regards to impact on the neighbors, people that live there. Talked about the wetlands and the animals, and which is all good. I feel they'll all get impacted. The river will get impacted, but nothing's mentioned about the existing people that have lived there, myself, 57 years. I mentioned many times that project is on a much higher elevation, and I don't trust this developer. He has a history of going on the cheap for things in court cases, and I attended the MEPA meeting on Zoom, and Julianne, who was the representative for the developer, she was told, or I forget who it was that talked about this developer and the history of not doing things properly. And we're worried in our neighborhood about all of this water, hardscaping 80% of that property with huge buildings and huge parking lots and all the roads. And so this Julianne's answer to that was, oh, but there'll be curbs. There'll be curbs that drop, make the water go where it's supposed to go into storm drains or whatever. What if these parking lots and roads and curbs are not made properly, made on the cheap? Because he's not made these things properly in the past, where parking lots have deteriorated, roads have deteriorated. So that's what we're worried about. So I don't know whose purview it is for stormwater management system, whether it will fail. It was asked at the MEPA meeting, what if it fails with all the retention basins they're putting in and whatever? What if it fails with all this rain that we're having, and we'll get more and more every year with global warming? And the answer was, he'll have to fix it. Well, he's still in court with not fixing the last big project. It wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't his last project, but it's many years in court now where he did not put in. I don't know if the town can make sure he puts in the right amount of layers or whatever, however you're supposed to build or put in parking lots, asphalt and all that, whether it has to go down a certain way in this town. The town engineer is probably the one that would be able to tell us that. But that's all I have to say. But I think something should be mentioned about impacting the environment for the people too that have been living there and have to put up with any damages in the future if he doesn't do things right. Thank you.
Thank you. So stormwater is within our purview, and we'll be doing certain things like asking for a bond to be issued and inspections on a certain frequency by the city engineer. So that then that bond isn't released until things are constructed in accordance with the design, those kinds of things. But certainly calling the attention of regulators at the state level to the importance of this site is important in the neighborhood. So is there a way we could add a few words to address, the impacts to residents, maybe
Yes.
in that last sentence there?
I agree that I think this is possible. And I appreciate your comment, Lucille, because I was focusing on things that are outside of our purview, but stormwater very much is. So that's something that we are actively working on and is part of the peer review to make sure that that system is one that the data matches and should in theory be sufficient. And then we will typically, for any stormwater permits issued, there are conditions related to providing the pond, all those things. So that was kind of why it wasn't originally included in that way. But I think it does make sense to include it, kind of list off things there in the end. And I think it might make sense to put something, I have an idea of what I would put in there. Yeah.
Do we have, public comments within our jurisdiction that talks about items that are within our jurisdiction? Like the stormwater impact?
Do we have those public comments? Absolutely. Yeah. Those would be included in the public comments that I would include that we previously just
Do we
discussed.
separate them between
So
outside and then?
it starts to be concerning to me
Yeah.
that I don't want to try to assume anything about what people's intent was with their comments by trying to categorize them in that way. I think it would be better just to give them in chronological order, and so that they receive everything and it's all within the way that it was received to us. But as soon as I try to categorize them, it seems like that might be, I don't know,
Okay.
potential
Well, for example, I made a comment just for myself as an individual citizen
to the planning board.
to the planning board, not related to the conservation commission, that addresses both things that are within and without
Mhm.
our jurisdiction. So I mentioned wildlife, I mentioned parking, I mentioned traffic, I mentioned neighborhood. I mean, it's sort of affordable housing. It would be in a letter like mine, it would be really hard to separate. those things out.
I just had maybe a comment to the letter then.
What did you say?
Did you say add a blurb to our letter?
I was going to add, so basically there's one point, I'm sorry, we can get into the details here, but let's see, there's a point where,
Like the last sentence of the next to the last paragraph.
yeah, downstream areas. So I list off here possible negative impacts to wildlife, downstream areas, and other environmental impacts beyond the commission's jurisdiction. I could add something that says stormwater impacts to neighbors outside of something related to that, and future concerns about maintenance. And then up here, we talk about the environmental, related to potential negative environmental and ecological impacts, particularly to wildlife, as well as we could, kind of recapture it there too. So it would probably be pretty short what I would add, frankly, but I think that will help cue them into when they review our comments, seeing that is included.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there other comments on the content of our comment letter? Yes.
I do have kind of a comment, but it's not well formulated. This is just sort of the first time I'm hearing about this comment letter. It sounds like it's just a way to summarize the reaction to the proposal.
Can you say your name for the record? Sorry.
My name is Jean Wilson, 377th Street. So I do like that having the full attachment, like you said, chronological, and what probably many people do, they have bullet points. But I'm just trying to think of a way that can get a picture of it, but maybe all it is maybe you just have to put it all out there. They get that picture.
And this is going to me.
Correct.
I was just wondering, because this seems to be like data analysis. You're looking at data, qualitative data, how to put it together in a way that makes more sense for the engineers, for the public, and for the, you know, what are the areas of the regulators, the areas that fall under that? You know, so to my mind, okay, what are the areas that are within the boundaries of the Conservation Commission? What are the other areas? You know, are 90% of the comments outside? Well, if they are, then where are they? And let's do something with those comments so they're just not sitting here. And then other people in the public, like me as a citizen, would want to know, well, if, you know, if there are, you know, 90%, I don't even know what it is, 30%, whatever it is, let's let those comments be used for something constructive. It's not just, oh, they got it off their chest and then it's sitting, you know, somewhere in a circular file, but what can we do with that? Is there something useful that the board somewhere needs to hear? Whether it's about wildlife, whether it's about people, whether it's about traffic. I mean, it's
Not if they've already passed the whole project. None of those matter.
So did they already pass them?
No.
So we're still at the right timeline where we can be speaking. So that's what I'm saying is that let's have that information so it's useful. You know, what's the point if we're speaking up and it's in a box somewhere and people don't know it? But if we say, well, the concerns are, the neighbors are very concerned, then another 20%, just sort of some numbers somewhere else. So I like the raw data, but then I like a way to summarize it so it's manageable and can be constructive and useful.
Without deleting, without editing.
Can I have your name for the record?
Darlene Orvieto, 44 Cherry Street.
So what will happen when these comments go to MIPA is that the MIPA reviewer will kind of go through, they'll go through the comment letters that they receive and look for items of concern. And the end of the MIPA process is a certificate that, you know, kind of says, you know, the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs will say, you know, this is what they were supposed to do. These are the permits that they have to get after this process. And these are the concerns that came up during the MIPA process, and these are next steps. So a lot of times that the Secretary's certificate will have items that have to be addressed during review by primarily by state agencies as it goes through the review process. So the MIPA office kind of tries their best to summarize the tenor and the areas of concern with the comments. Is how I understand it.
Okay.
Is this just an ENF or is there an EIR threshold? Because if there is an EIR required, which is the next step, then the comments would also maybe.
They have it in their email, EIR and ENF.
Yeah, do you have that email right there with it? Can I see that? Because that would be helpful. I think definitely this is for the ENF.
Doesn't the EIR just get tripped by the amount of impervious area?
So basically there's an ENF if the project is like within a certain size range, and if the project is over a higher level than an EIR is required. And the comment letters that go to MIPA, MIPA may turn those comments into questions that then have to be addressed by the EIR before the project can go up on the permitting.
Can you also just define what is EIR?
Environmental impact report. So right now we're at the environmental notification report stage.
Well, that's public.
Yes.
And I'm not an expert on this is just my like understanding of how it goes.
If folks want to reach out to me for the contact information for their main person, you know, like I'm the staff person for the Conservation Commission. There's a staff person for the MIPA process, and I have their contact information if anyone wants it.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Oh, absolutely. So if you want to email me, probably be the best way. Conservation, Easthampton, ma.gov, or the city website, you can find it. So email me that way. But so okay, just to summarize your question a second ago, this is a notification that was sent by Nick Marino, who is the staff person for the MIPA process, and it says the EENF indicates that the project meets or exceeds the following review thresholds: mandatory EIR, triggered by I'm not going to read this number, creation of 10 or more acres of impervious area, and generation of 3,000 or more new additional on-road providing access to a single location. And then the next bullet is an ENF, triggered by creation of 5 or more acres of impervious area, creation of land in active agricultural, conversion of land in active agricultural use to non-agricultural use, provided the land includes soils classified as prime, state important or unique to the USDA, generation of 2,000 or more new additional roadways providing access to a single location, generation of 1,000 or more new additional roadways providing access to a single location, and construction of 150 or more new parking spaces at a single location, construction of 300 or more new parking spaces at a single location. So, and then the last piece is that the EENF indicates that the project requires the following state agency permits or financial assistance, which is the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Vehicular Access Permit, which they explain is typically known as a curb cut. So
So is what they submitted an EENF or?
no, it's an ENF that was submitted. Yeah. Yep.
But
And
didn't
so,
you just read that they need to submit an EIR?
yes. And, I mean, I can read this whole notification. I think it'll explain it if
Yeah,
you all would like.
I think that was that the purpose of the new up because they went over certain thresholds,
Yep. That's why.
but they crossed 2 thresholds. The first.
Can I see it real quick?
Absolutely. I find it very likely that they are correctly going through the NEPA process at this stage.
So this says an expanded environmental notification form has been submitted. So it's an ENF, 2 E's. And usually what an ENF is an attempt is when somebody has been asked, or when somebody exceeds a mandatory EIR threshold, they may submit an EENF to try to skip the EIR
I see.
with a 1-step process instead of a 2-step process.
Okay.
So then MEPA has to decide if there are so many concerns and comments and issues coming in that have not been completely addressed in the EENF, that then an EIR may be required despite the attempt to not go through the EIR process. Again, this is just like my understanding. This is not like any kind of legal interpretation. But
So the town can't push this through, the city can't push this through without the full agreement of MEPA?
No, so they're all kind of separate processes, I think is probably the best way to look at it, in my opinion. Because again, I'm not as familiar with the state NEPA process, but basically my understanding is that the project will need an order of conditions to proceed if they propose any impacts to jurisdictional areas, which currently they do.
Yeah.
So they need to receive that before they can proceed. They would also need to receive a special permit. They're going through their own process through the planning board, which is currently underway as well, and that must be completed before they can proceed as well.
Right.
So both those reviews are currently underway, and now you add this next one, which is MEPA, which is a state one.
Now, do they also require the citizens, to be on board with this, or is this something the city can push ahead because of how lucrative this is for them to do?
It is not a city project. It's owned by a private person, and it's just they're pursuing this
The
project.
developer who wants to push this through.
That's typical that if their
I
people
see.
own private property, they pursue, if they need to get a permit, that they come to they go through these city processes to receive their permitting that's
Okay, so
required.
this is a private project. I thought the city was developing.
No,
Okay.
no.
This is a private project.
The
This
developers,
isn't part of the whole 15-minute city thing.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with it, so.
all right, we should move on, I think, but are there any more comments on the letter?
And I'm not seeing if folks have any comments online, that they can raise their hand if they have anything they want to add to it.
All right, hearing none, let us entertain a motion to issue the comment letter to MEPA office as we've been discussing.
The motion that we issue the comment letter that Cassie drafted with the requested changes by both Julie Busa and
Lucille Costa.
Second. All those in favor? Roll call vote. Yeah, I definitely don't have, last names memorized. Commissioner Carr, Commissioner August,
Aye.
Commissioner Weeks. Aye. Commissioner, man, brain really
More
does go blank when you're doing this. I go, all right. I don't involve myself, right? All right, I think the motion passed just unanimously.
Okay, cool. And then the other piece was, again, I don't have any new information for the notice of intent project that's been received, so there's nothing to review in that regard. But I have received, there are a couple of written comments that I wanted to read since the last meeting, and then obviously if there are folks in attendance who would like to make some written comment of their own comments, they're welcome to do so. Do you prefer that I read them first and then we open it up to folks here, or?
Just real quick.
Yes.
We had that meeting on Monday for the MIPA open to the public, right?
There was-
6, for instance.
There is a site visit
Yeah,
scheduled
that was,
through
that
MIPA.
was my question. What's up with the second?
So the site visit is another part of their process. I plan to be in attendance, but they made a point at the virtual session to note that it's not a time for comments, particularly from the public. So it's more strictly informational gathering so they can put it all in context. So if folks plan to go, I wouldn't anticipate that you would have an opportunity to speak at the site visit. I don't know, but that's my understanding. So I would encourage you to submit a written comment at this stage, if that's what you'd like to do. If you still feel like you have more you want to say, that I think would be the most efficient route to go, because they may not let you talk at the site visit. Not really sure.
3:00.
I think, I have it in there. Sorry.
Somewhere.
Sorry.
We don't.
Oh, it's in that evening.
Nope, you think you have it right there in front of you.
It is 1 o'clock.
Oh, 1:00.
And there was a request that people try to RSVP for that. So reach out to me if you need that contact information, but that was the request. Okay, thanks, Mike, for bringing that up.
Comments.
Okay, so these are the comments I received. So first, I need to apologize because there were 2 other comments that were received that should have been read at the last meeting, and I just didn't read them, and I apologize for that. So I'll start in the oldest received comments first. Okay, this comment was received May 9th, Tuesday, May 9th, from Robert Parent. Dear Chairs Belcher, I don't know how to say it, Tim, through the city clerk, and Chair Busa. The applicant for the above referenced project has submitted incomplete/invalid application materials to your boards since a portion of the subject project connection to the city sewer interceptor is located on private property, and the applicant has not obtained the consent of the private property owner to file the application or to complete the proposed work. This consent is required as part of the complete application as stated in the city site plan, special permit, and stormwater management permit application form. See the language below. If the applicant is not the property owner of record, then the signature of the owner is required. In fact, the owner of the private property has submitted a letter to your boards objecting to the proposed project. See the attached letter dated March 17th, 2023. That comment has been read to the commission previously. The applicant recently modified the project plans submitted to the Conservation Commission to remove the work in question from regulation under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, but that does not change the status of the work being under Planning Board or Stormwater Authority regulations. I hereby request that your boards reject the application for the above referenced project as incomplete/invalid until such time as the private property owner's approval has been received. As an aside, as an update, because this is, we've had meetings since May 9th, clarifying that area where they were proposing to go through the abutter's property is no longer a part of the project, as far as I understand it. No, excuse me. They're still going to connect the water. That's what it was. They moved it out of the areas jurisdictional of the Conservation Commission. They shifted. It was previously potentially within the 100 buffer zone, and it's now been shifted, but there is still potentially a connection into that other person's property. But for our process, I don't think that it's required anymore to get their signature because it's no longer within jurisdictional area. I'm not sure, but that is an item that.
Yeah, my memory is that at a former meeting, Julie said it's not in our jurisdiction, but she strongly recommended that they get their ducks in a row and contact that landlord.
I believe that's correct. I've been in communication with DEP about this question as well, of how the commission should address if there is some error in the filing. And it all needs to be resolved before the commission would issue an order. Doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be rejected at this stage. So they need to come to a resolution before a permit is issued. Is the main summary, essentially. Okay, and then the next comment, this was received Wednesday, May 10th. And let's see, from Robert Parent, Cassie, the limits of work in the buffer zone and associated tree clearing appears to be significantly underrepresented in many areas since building and other project setbacks from the proposed limits are too tight to be practical. The setbacks to the proposed tree line seem to be very narrow in some locations. When the foundations and structures are built, the canopy of trees whose limbs otherwise extend into the cleared zone will need to be cut back. In addition, if foundation drains are installed, there will be encroachments into the setbacks in order to build these and other drain outlets. Review of the limits of work as shown by the project applicant should be completed by the peer reviewer. That is to be included by the peer reviewer, just as a comment on my part. Okay, last one. This was received Sunday, July 23rd, 2023, from Nancy Natali. Let's see, and it's titled Comment Objecting to the Easthampton MA Tasty Top / Sierra Vista project. As a resident of Easthampton, I am very concerned about the proposed construction of numerous apartment buildings, a bank, a recreational facility, and other structures to be built on the approximate 33-acre site. This project will have severe consequences for the city of Easthampton on its residents, its wild animal population, the forest trees and native plants now located on the parcel of land itself, as well as the entire surrounding area. I am shocked that the current plan calls for nearly 12 acres of blacktop to provide parking and roadways for the project, and that the runoff from this impervious surface will go downhill directly into agricultural land and waterways. I understand that part of the 33-acre site is in active agricultural use and contains soil that is classified as prime or unique by the USDA. Our area is home to black bears, beaver, opossums, raccoons, rabbits, coyotes, deer, fish, numerous wild bird, plant, and insect species, and we treasure the open space and view of the Mount Tom Range. The amount of runoff, excess lighting, noise, and construction that this project plans to generate is totally unsuitable for our small city. Road access within the surrounding Easthampton, within and surrounding Easthampton is extremely limited due to rivers and streams that require bridges and limit roads. I understand that the proposed project will have only one point of access, and that it will be on Route 10 / Northampton Street. This road already suffers from tragic congestion during commuter peak times, and adding an addition 3,000 plus additional daily trips to this road boggles my mind. Since I live on one of the access streets to Route 10, I can already envision that my street will become impassable at certain times because of backed up traffic trying to avoid Route 10. This will certainly affect my quality of life and the value of our property, as I and my family will be affected by the additional traffic, noise, dirt, pollution, and potential for accidents caused by impatient drivers. I am also mindful that the planned construction of this major project is to take place over a period of some years, and that the effect of ongoing construction and damage to our one major roadway into and out of Easthampton will be further badly involved. Having spent most of our lives in the eastern part of the state, my partner and I relocated to Western Massachusetts some 25 years ago because we wanted to escape the overwhelming traffic, noise, and population. The fact that this proposed project now plans to inflict on Easthampton the same objectionable conditions that we thought we had escaped is really horrifying. Please do not let this overwhelming project be constructed as planned on the terrible detriment of the city of Easthampton. Nancy Natale, Easthampton, Mass. 01027.
These are new comments. You said.
Correct. Yeah, the first two were received in May, and I neglected to read them. That was before we started the peer review process. There was a pause for a period of time. This is a very recent one. Correct. Okay, so those are my written comments that I've received.
I guess. So could we have clarification about the signature of the abutter? When we come down to it, because I don't know if we're supposed to have a signature or not.
Yeah, that would be good to, because I do not
clarification.
understand the legality there either.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably there's an easement that the city has that sewer is on, and I don't know. That adds a wrinkle into it in my mind, so I just don't understand the legal ramifications there.
I understand. I can reach out to DEP again to get their perspective on what's required. But generally it was that, in that comment, they were saying that we need to, at this stage now, reject the process and then they would resubmit. But DP didn't agree that that was required. They just need to, before a commission comes to a decision or considers issue an order of conditions, that certainly should be clarified and sorted out to figure out what is needed and make sure that it's been obtained before the commission proceeds.
The commissioner, questions, concerns, anything? Comments from the public in attendance, virtually or in person?
My name is Catherine Winsky. I'm at 22 Overlook Drive in Easthampton. To first thank everybody. I am learning a huge amount tonight about this process. I'm very concerned about this project. I think that it pushes Easthampton into a higher urbanization, which we don't really want. We have a nice small city feel. I know many people in town would prefer to still be a town and not a city. I would ask this commission and the other groups reviewing it whether they would look at rejecting the proposal completely and what authority you have to reject it. Because everything I keep hearing in all the meetings that I've observed and attended is this is what they need to do in order to get this approved. I would love to hear we do not wish to approve this at all, and this is where we're heading in this direction. If the citizens need to do something more to push that so that it doesn't get approved at all, we just need to know that. What do we need to do? I think Easthampton would benefit more from farmland than it would from high-rise apartments that are totally outside the current culture of our city.
Darlene Rivero, 44 Cherry Street. I'm trying to understand the dominion of the Conservation Committee as far as comments or as far as the project as a whole. I know that Easthampton makes great claims about being green, and I think this is dragging us very violently in the other way. Everything that Nancy, just on her comment, she's attending the meeting now on Zoom. I mean, it's going to be so damaging to our environment. And I'm, strangely enough, looking at that poster, it says wetlands are common wealth. Well, we're just going to trash ours. So I'm a little confused. If you have no purview over protecting our wildlife environment, then why are you here? I'm just trying to understand it. I mean, Conservation Committee has really no say over the conservation of our lands, is what it sounds like to me from what I was listening to initially. So just some food for thought. I mean, we're not clearly a green city. That's a
Fallacy.
That's a fallacy. That's been made very clear already. This project pushes it in really. I mean, I live on the $5.5 million street that wasn't really necessary. And we needed better drainage. We didn't need marble curbs, tire busters. So, thank you.
Dan, can you comment or Cassie about our purview and what we do?
Yeah, I was gonna, once Cassie got done.
Thank you.
Best place to summarize it.
Yeah, I can definitely, I'm happy to do that. Hold on just a second. Thank you. Okay. So yes, so the commission basically is empowered through what's known as the Wetlands Protection Act. The Wetlands Protection Act enumerates different types of jurisdictional areas where if people propose to work with any of those types of areas, then they need to get a permit with the commission, and then the commission is empowered typically to impose conditions.
So you do have quite a bit of say over this. These are wetlands.
So they have provided us with a delineation of where the wetlands are, and the commission, part of what we're doing is reviewing that delineation. What they are proposing is impacts to what's known, the type of jurisdictional area that they're proposing impacts to is what's known as the 100-foot buffer zone. Most jurisdictional areas have set performance standards that need to be met. And basically, when the commission does its review, we're checking to make sure all those performance standards are being met. If all the performance standards are being met, then the commission typically would need to issue the permit unless they have a reason that they're not being met. Then they're empowered to deny, or they risk, if they can't deny for no reason, otherwise they risk being appealed, and then they would just go up to DEP and would likely be approved if they can prove that they're meeting all the performance standards. So for the 100-foot buffer zone, the only performance standard is that the commission needs to ensure that the work will not result in a negative impact to the wetlands below. And so that is a little more open to interpretation. Typically what that includes is, are they going to be doing, what will be the stability of the soils up above or within the 100-foot buffer zone? How are they securing those things? Right now, what's underway is a peer review. So we have hired, at the applicant's expense, a third-party person who works for the Conservation Commission now to check their work, essentially. And that will be checking their work in regards to meeting that performance standard and convincing the commission that they are doing that and that they're meeting the performance standards for 100-foot buffer zone impacts. The other place that the commission has purview is over the stormwater management system that they're proposing. So there's a set list of standards that need to be met for that under the Wetlands Protection Act. There's also a set list of standards under the city ordinance. So the commission wants to make sure they're complying with both. The peer review is helping us make that determination. So those are the pieces under which the commission can review. But some of the comments that we received related, they don't have purview over things like considerations for traffic, don't have purview over considerations for things outside of jurisdictional areas generally beyond the stormwater. So that would be like aesthetics or changes in culture to, changes in the culture of the land or the town, and or bears. If there was impacts to riverfront area, that potentially could trigger a need for a wildlife habitat assessment. That's one of the performance standards, but that's not the case here because they're not proposing impacts to 200-foot riverfront area. So it's very explicit what the commission is allowed and not allowed to do. And so that's what we're following as our guide of how to review this project.
Is anyone doing a assessment on wildlife?
As far as I know, I have not yet received one, though it's curious to see if there would be potentially a requirement through the MIPA process, because that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, is that they potentially can include consideration for things that the Conservation Commission legally cannot.
Okay.
So.
Okay, you said this peer review is going to make sure that they do everything right, but that's in their plans. Who follows through and checks on what's done after when he's in the process of building things, and even after he's done? What is our recourse if there's problems in our neighborhood from things that he did not do right?
Recourse.
So basically what they will get if they get to a place where the commission feels like it is appropriate to issue an order of conditions, that's like the permit that the commission issues. That order of conditions will list out essentially rules that they have to follow during construction. Typically, that would include weekly reporting of the erosion controls and containment of the site.
Somebody checks it out? Somebody goes and inspects?
Well, no, I don't usually complete the inspections. They need to hire someone to do the inspections who will submit reports to me, a qualified person.
You hire the commission, the Conservation Commission hires someone.
The developer would hire someone.
Well, good luck with that.
Well, if I can explain, that person will need to meet certain qualifications. They have to provide proof of that, and that person would be approved by the commission.
Oh, okay.
So then that person, they submit typically the way the condition reads as weekly reporting and every 0.25 inch rain event. That's just one of the conditions that would likely be included in the order. It would probably have a lot of conditions. We're looking for the peer reviewer to potentially suggest potential conditions that could be included as well, beyond what we typically do or what the commission already will determine they want included.
This developer has a history of not following through with things in his history.
So the next piece of it is that if there's issues during construction, the commission could issue an enforcement order to require compliance, and that would
put a stop order on what he's doing.
It is potentially something that the commission could pursue if needed. Then when the work is done, what they'll need to receive is what's called a certificate of compliance. And that has rules and things that they would need to prove that the work has been completed in the way that it was permitted. And then that the system is functioning and is acceptable.
And then the bond will hopefully cover if all this may be future mistakes.
Exactly right. The bond
Past
amount,
mistakes.
yeah, the bond amount should be enough to build the entire stormwater system should something happen in the project, if it's abandoned or who knows what. Then the city will use those bond funds to complete the stormwater system. At the end of the project, that will be, the stormwater system will be reviewed. If it's found to be completed correctly and in compliance with what was required, they will get their bond returned to them.
They get the bond back. So what if down the road there's erosion and problems?
So this is like, now it kind of enters the realm of all projects everywhere in the city. If there's some kind of violation that occurs of the Wetlands Protection Act or related to stormwater, the commission is empowered to issue an enforcement order in that instance. And if we don't get to compliance there, then you elevate it to DEP. There's like kind of a process in place.
Hopefully you don't end up in court.
One of the requirements will be submitting an operation and maintenance plan that the commission would review to make sure that the future plan of maintaining that system is correct.
Now, this is in 4 phases. If he's messing up in the first phases, is it any way to stop him from going on to the next phase
And so like I said,
when he's already got permission for it?
if the commission ever finds that they're not in compliance with that order of conditions, that order will exist throughout the life of the project. If they ever find that they're not in compliance, the commission is empowered to issue an enforcement order.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
All right. Any further comments today?
I have another question that just kind of popped into my mind. I'm not exactly sure about the peer review process, but I wondered, it sounds like it's an important, to have that, but to make sure that it's functioning properly, I wonder, is this person, vetted or interviewed for any kind of conflict of interest? It would make sense if there's some, I don't know, connection or collusion.
Which I'm sure he has many.
Are you talking
in the
about?
best interest for the peer reviewer, that's commenting about whatever developer, is there a process in place to make sure that this collusion, isn't there, or just looking out for that so that the comments are in good faith and of integrity?
I don't know if anyone wants to answer. I can answer what I understand it, but.
From my perspective, we invited several firms to submit proposals for peer review. We went, we picked firms that we've sort of come across through different professional work that don't tend to work in Western Massachusetts. The firm that is doing the work, I don't think I've ever seen them work in Easthampton or in the area before. They're from out by Westboro or thereabouts. And they're very well respected in the area. So that's, then we picked another couple of firms that fall in that category. So that's how we, that's how we
research that. To see if there's connection.
And I would, right. And then that last piece, it's all public record. So any information that you want related to who the peer reviewer is, I'm happy to provide it. The other piece though that I would add is that we go through this kind of process where we solicit potential proposals. We do an RFP for proposals from these different consulting firms. They submit how much they would charge for that work. And then we get that money from the applicant, becomes the city holds it in escrow. Then the city conservation commission uses it to hire third party. So this third party is not hired by the applicant, but it is funded by the applicant, if that makes sense. And so they have entered a contract with the Conservation Commission to give us this information truthfully and correctly. And, these are engineers, and I would think that their reputation is important to operating correctly. So but I think that element of how it's being paid for is important to understand for how that kind of, for your concerns, if that makes sense. Yeah,
If
absolutely.
they are connected somehow, the group that was chosen, given how much they're charging, given how many notes they gave back to the developers, things that need to be addressed. I would say that they're not colluding behind closed doors very well. I don't think it's benefiting the developer at all to have this particular being their peer review, as far as I can tell.
So Cassie, is there, can you help people where they can go and see all this information?
Yeah.
The peer review, the comments,
Yeah.
letters.
So it's all available on the city website for the Conservation Commission. If you scroll down on the right, there's a section for current applications. You'll see this one. It's a clickable link. Then you can work through it all there. But if you have any questions, always my job is to be here as a liaison for the public. So if people have questions or need anything, just let me know. I'm happy to share. It's like I said, it's all public record. So happy to do it.
All right, any internet comments? Comments from
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
okay. Then I think it would be time to continue to, when are we continuing to? Is it,
The August 14th.
do we have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue to our next meeting on August 14th.
Do I hear a second? Second. I hear two. Roll call vote. Commissioner Carr.
I,
Commissioner August. Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore. I counted names that time. All right, motion passes. Let's continue to August 14th. 6 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm available if anyone has questions.
Next item on the agenda. Public meeting, notice of intent filed by Howard Lake Associates Inc. on behalf of One Industrial Lots LLC.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm the one that, I'm the one that counted around
Commercial
everything.
residential
Oh, okay.
redevelopment
So
project,
you're
associated
not-
stormwater management system at 1 Perry Street.
Yeah.
At 135 Lot 2, request filed on July 6th, 2023.
Thank you for your patience.
Yep. Would you introduce yourself?
Okay.
I will pull it up on the screen here in a second. Hold on.
All right, good evening, name is Philippe Cravo, project engineer for our Levesque Associates. Here tonight with the applicant, Mr. Mike Michaud of One Industrial Lots LLC. We are here tonight for the notice of intent application for the proposed improvements or modification to said improvements over at 1 Ferry Street. Now, just to kind of recap where we are in the process is that there is currently an open order of conditions on this project or on this property, issued in conjunction with, essentially there's two tracks. The track on the west side is at the corner near the roundabout, which I'm sure most of the commission is aware of. That looks beautiful. It's been constructed over the past couple of years. And when that was permitted, the west side of the canal was also part of the entirety of the project. And obviously, since the project has evolved since that original submission, the modifications to the east side have evolved. Under the original application, there was essentially an existing building that was essentially ran along the canal in this location here. That's the other dash line and there. So the plan originally was to modify the existing building there and work within the existing site to the west of that building.
So just, right, is this the current proposal or is this the previously approved?
So this is the current proposal. So what you're seeing there and up on the screen is the current proposal.
Thank you.
which direction is west on here?
West is to the left. East, so here's the canal. The pond is just across the way over here. The roundabout's just on 30th Street right here. So under this new proposal, the existing building that's essentially on the canal would be totally demoed in favor of a new building towards the center of the site, and essentially eliminating the reuse of that existing building. It's in the dilapidated state that is beyond repair. Is that fair to say, Mike?
Correct.
What is being proposed under this new, jurisdictional area on the property is associated with some buffer zone off the front of the site with a canal, with a pond, and then with a canal itself. And some land subject to flooding. So there's a flood elevation on the property, so and that elevation is 122.3, just to be technically accurate. So part of our submission, we are showing that we have a couple figures in there that show that. So when the flood study was prepared, those old mill buildings were already existing, so therefore that the area of those were excluded from the flood study or didn't count within the floodplain. So what we're proposing here is the demolition of those buildings in favor of the new building and providing, and just that swap of building area provides enough compensatory storage within the floodplain just based on the square footage of the buildings at those lower elevations. So there is a couple figures in the notice of intent application that demonstrate the different areas.
So that whole area to the right of the canal is all flood?
Well, just the very lower elevation. So Ferry Street is way up high. We're at about elevation, 143, 138. So up here, feet of elevation, like 143. Then the flood elevation is down here, essentially down in this corner. It's down at 122.3. So from here to here, there's a pretty significant grade change. So that flood elevation is associated with the site, sort of down at, along the canal, down this lower region here. And obviously, there was a large building that occupied the majority of the site, and then you have the existing building that is still there and visible from the street, right up adjacent to the canal. But essentially what is being proposed is, entrance, a sort of entrance and porte cochere here off of the Ferry Street, and then just essentially a long gradual grade or ramp down to the lower elevations. This is essentially flat down here, just kind of graded so that you get, runoff to go to a few low points down here at the bottom elevations. Paved, yes. So this would be all new parking associated with the site improvements. In addition, the lower elevations of this new building are going to be open. We kind of, when we did our calculations, we assumed that this building was an enclosed structure, and we sort of did not include the building area in the flood calculations. But in reality, that building is going to be open to flooding. There's not going to be any doors or gates or anything that would stop any water from going, under that first floor where it's strictly parking. Similar to the building that's there now, I don't know if there's maybe a vent onto the site. That building is just open, it's an open first floor parking situation over there. So that's really what's going on here with the new building and the impacts to the flood elevation down at the lower elevations.
So the area where the new building is being proposed, what's there right now?
A lot of stuff, there's a pretty, stockpile. There's not much there now. It's just kind of remnants of what was previously on the property.
I have pictures from the site visit if you want me to show.
Yeah.
Maybe helpful.
Let me just explain something just a little bit more. Again, I'm Mike Nishan. The purpose, all we're really doing is the building is the exact same width and length as the building that we were going to originally build along the canal. The problem that once we really got into this side of the site, it's not accessible on the canal side. So, we're building against the canal. We have staging going over the top of the roof. It's going to end up being a nightmare. EMS can't get to that side of the building. And then maintenance of the entire building. So we just literally took the footprint from the canal and moved it to the center of the site. And that was enough for the change. But the stormwater calculations are almost neutral.
Yeah, so from a stormwater standpoint, there's several outfalls that go to the canal. And, what was previously proposed was to reutilize those outfalls, obviously improve the existing conditions with water quality treatment. But, there's an overall net reduction in impervious area. So we're improving the water quality prior to discharge. And, there's various other outfalls that come from the neighboring property to the east that will be maintained under this scenario. But what's coming from our site is essentially what was proposed under the original order of conditions, just modified to accommodate the new.
I think I was just trying to understand it. I think you answered it. If there was a change in impervious area, but before there was going to be parking to the right of the
Yes,
current building.
correct. I brought
I also have a copy of the original.
of the original.
This kind of just shows the term.
Yeah, so essentially, the building was over here where this parking is, and it was just a flip flop. So the building goes to the middle, the parking goes to the side.
And these sides is an access road?
Yes, so you'll have a main drive aisle that comes
Right.
down around.
And that was proposed before, right?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. You drove down, the ramp was still there because you have to get down to that lower elevation, except you came into the middle versus to the outside.
Yeah, I was on the site visit. It is a pretty big drop.
Yeah, it's a very big drop. Once you're out there.
Where was the runoff going? That's you remember?
So, I mean, generally the shape of the site is that everything kind of like slopes down towards the canal, right? Like towards the back of the property and the canal. I think it might be helpful if I share the images from the site visit so the commissioners can get a better idea what we're working with here. Let's see, this site visit was conducted on July 12th, 2023. And hopefully, I think I gotta reshare my screen. Hold on. Okay, so this is kind of when you enter the site, we've kind of come, I think we might have even already come down a little already, but that Ferry Street is like behind us in this image. So you can see there's this existing structure on the left, and then it's kind of like there's all this stockpiled like old material here because it was, previously industrial use. It was a mill. So there's the building that's closest to Ferry Street. And if I remember correctly, Mike, you were saying that building will remain, but will be changed.
That's the old hydro plant.
Yeah.
So that'll become a retail location.
Oh.
Coffee, sandwiches, pastry.
And then we kind of carried on down. That's just like a better look at that existing hydro building. That's probably you telling me exactly what you just said.
So Cassie,
Yeah.
did you say July 22?
July 12th,
Oh,
2023.
July 23.
Excuse me. Yeah, July 12th, 2023 is when we did the site visit. Okay, looking back at the main building to be removed. And then this is essentially the area kind of where the new building would be, right? Like, yeah, and then it's flanked on either side by paved roadway and driveway and parking
And your
spaces.
property lines up to the building on the right.
That's right. Yeah, good point.
Except for that awning or whatever.
Yeah. All basically where you see this white surface on these buildings, that's essentially the property line, but it bumps in a little where those trees are. You get the break in that white material, and that's a bump in where the property line bumps out, and they're going to put a bocce course there.
Yeah,
Yeah, correct.
where's the bocce? Is that it right there?
That's this little bump in, which is that bump.
Yeah. I'll get to another picture where it's a little more clear. It's kind of just spinning around here. Again, so yeah, where these trees are. I don't know, you probably can't see my cursor hardly at all, but it's hard. Okay, so this is a continuation of that building that's to be removed, where originally they were going to just redevelop that, but now it's going to be removed entirely and become parking and a driveway. I think that's on the edge of the property line. This is looking back up towards Ferry Street, so you can kind of get an idea of that slope change. The mill buildings on the right and the stockpiled old materials on the left. Getting down closer to like that bottom elevation. This treed area is essentially where the bocce ball carts are going to be. But it's totally outside of any area jurisdiction of the commission, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, it's also a better higher elevation.
Carrying on. Kind of just spinning around, looking back towards Ferry Street. This is again looking towards the property line. It's a better view of where the bocce ball carts are going to go. Okay, now we're looking back towards the end, towards the bike path that kind of runs along the back there.
That water.
This just, I mean, it had rained, or this is on the 12th. The flood was on the 10th. So, I mean, we certainly had rain since then, but water just gathers here. Again, that back area. Go ahead.
So what's the existing canal wall composed of? The one, right along the edge there, and
It's
what-
granite.
is it in good condition?
Yes, yeah. Both sides are.
So will it be impacted at all by the demolition?
I'm sure we'll have to be careful of that, and we're gonna actually add to the top of it a new concrete like buttress. It'll be 42 inches high from the parking lot.
Okay. Another footbridges that span over the canal now or proposed? I'm seeing these dash lines.
It's proposed.
That's proposed. Is that permitted currently?
Permitted, I don't think there needs to be a permit for that. But what do you mean by permitted?
Are those covered in any of the approved plans?
I believe the original order had those.
Yeah, nothing has changed other than the movement of the building going to the middle of the lot.
Yeah.
So it's the same.
No, I'm just trying to understand everybody that.
So there's a handful of things that aren't in the jurisdiction because the canal's got a concrete bottom, so it's not considered a stream. So there's a whole, another part of that we've consulted with the state on. So, we, as the owner, I have drawdown rights, I have dam rights, I have hydroelectric rights. We have obviously cleaning rights, so we're gonna clean the canal because there's a lot of debris in there now that's been up there for years. And eventually that's gonna be a kind of a focal point of the project.
So just kind of to that point, it came up, what the jurisdiction around the canal came up during the original order of conditions being sought back in 2018. And then again, when we did that slope work in the back, that got its own separate order of conditions. And we were able to get information based off of how the commission made its determination back in 2018. And I have that information if we want to look at that, but basically saying that it has the 100-foot buffer zone associated with it, but it's like particular what the jurisdiction is. So if it's helpful, I can read what that was. And because the commission has agreed with that again, well, one, they made that determination when they issued the first order in 2018, which is still valid for tract 1, that kind of locks in that interpretation. And it kind of was reiterated during the slope order of conditions, but that's been closed out now. But yeah, it's still pretty much as locked in as this interpretation. Let me just pull that up if it's helpful. Let's see.
Yeah, that'd be a good reminder for me.
So what I've included in the file for you guys was this kind of description that we used in the slope project that kind of summarized this. And I'll read it now again. Let's see. Okay, for possible 200-foot riverfront area associated with the canal. It was originally determined as part of the existing order of conditions, DEP file number 151-0298 and 151-0299, that's track 1 and 2, that the historical aerial photography determined the canal to be a human-made canal on both upstream from the culvert located below the bike path and downstream of that crossing to the confluence with the Manhan River, and thus does not have 200-foot riverfront area associated with it under 310 CMR 10.58 2A1G. See David Fallis, DEP correspondence on canal status. And David Fallis at the time was working for DEP and helped the commission come to that determination through his recommendation. So it came up when we did this permit because that was one of the comments received from DEP was like, what's the status of this? So I feel confident that the commission likely is not empowered to change that interpretation because that other order still exists, kind of blocking that status in place. And yeah.
I wasn't here for the first order of conditions, but Could you just clarify what your jurisdictional areas were and the floodplain?
So that would have been the 100-foot, it's similar to what is now, 100-foot buffer zone,
To what?
the canal. So right at the
No.
edge.
The canal itself is not jurisdiction?
No, it doesn't, because of the, it flows all year round. It is flowing perennially, but it is not afforded 200-foot riverfront area performance standards because of its man-made status. And so it only gets a 100-foot buffer zone associated from the edge of it. I know it's a lot. So, but just from the edge extends out a 100-foot buffer zone. And it basically runs exactly parallel to that straight line that is the
And
edge
we
of the canal.
approved phase two, right?
What's that?
We approved phase two.
Yeah. So originally the commission, that was the commission's
And
interpretation
now
originally.
we're moving that building out
Place.
of the 100-foot. Well, it's a little
Will
bit.
it be outside? I can't remember.
Just the front of it, I think.
Yeah,
Farther away.
see it here, but I believe 60, yeah, it'll cross, the 100-foot would cross. A portion of the building would be inside.
So, yeah, I definitely agree with the canal interpretation relative to the riverfront area. And agree that there are other resource areas present that all sort of lines up with my understanding of the site.
Yep. And so the other types of jurisdictional areas in consideration here and the performance standards related to them is 100-foot buffer zone and bordering land subject to flooding. The biggest performance standard for bordering land subject to flooding is ensuring that you are providing enough compensatory storage for any fill that you're adding. And then there's of course the stormwater, because this project is pursuing a stormwater permit simultaneously and making sure it meets the state standards as well under the act.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, it seems to make sense. My preference, I don't know how the other commissioners feel, would be to continue to next meeting, so Julie and Jay can have an opportunity to take a look at it. Julie may have opinions. And also, so this is a new notice of intent. I guess just administratively, did we get a file number yet?
I didn't receive one.
No, we did not, have not received yet the file number.
Okay, so we'd have to wait
Yeah.
until
So
next meeting anyways.
yeah, so the commission is empowered to open the hearing for a project that hasn't received a file number yet, but we cannot issue a permit until we get one. And we're kind of just beholden on to when DEP is able to issue one to us. And there may be comments included with that the commission wants to consider. But so we kind of have to continue no matter what to August 14th.
Yeah, so tonight would be an opportunity to obviously present the project as it is, gather any feedback from the commission, that any questions, comments, any additional information, and hopefully, by the next time we're here, we have a file number, we've addressed all the DEP comments, any questions that the commission might have, and, be in mind for the next meeting.
Yep.
And then the last piece of it that kind of makes it a little more complicated is, right, so there's an existing order of conditions for this project. And you'll see on the agenda, the next item is for certificate of compliance. My recommendation for the commission is to just immediately continue that because they don't want to receive the certificate of compliance, closing out the old order until it's pretty much determined that a new one will be. So they shouldn't be without an order of conditions for any period of time. And we've done that before in the past, there's precedent for that, and it seems acceptable. So I can talk more about the certificate of compliance when we get there if you guys just want info about it. But my understanding is it will be a request for no work was ever done. So it's essentially, I think it's called an invalid order is what it's called, as harsh as it sounds, but I'm just closing it out.
And you said that the building is there right now also has the first floor is open? When you're
So,
demolishing, you would be demolishing
yeah, so that the building there, we would,
the
was
bottom?
the bottom, I mean, it's been there, it's got doors and openings, all along the side, but when it was built, or when the flood study was done, it was essentially considered a closed structure from a floodplain standpoint, so that area was not, included in the floodplain. So, so the trading of the areas between the removal of the two buildings and the installation of the new building, it's like just a trade-off. We're actually, giving back more comp storage than what was there previously.
Is there a difference in elevation for the new building?
Yes.
Higher up than the old building would have been.
No, down at the bottom elevations, it's relatively close to what the existing elevation is there now. From the street, you know, you're gonna be up, it's gonna look like, a couple stories from the street when you're looking at it from the street. But then you drive around the back, and, you know, that lower elevation is gonna be a parking garage, so it's gonna look a little taller from down at the bottom.
I mean, I'm sure since we already got the order of conditions for the first time, that you did all your water stuff.
Yes, yep.
Just trying to imagine how to. So did we have a lot to add to the new order of conditions?
So the reason that they're not coming for an amended order is because technically it's been, this new plan results in an increase in the amount of disturbed area. So DEP has a policy that if that's the case, you shouldn't do an amended, you should do a new notice of intent, which is why they came before us this way. Because it's a little bit more of a review, so I agree with that process to go with a new order because there is increased amount of farming land subject to flooding being impacted by the work. And so they just mainly need to prove that they're going to compensate for all that impact.
So is there a possibility that we would have to add to the new order of conditions? So they have
I
an
see.
order of conditions, close it out,
Yeah.
you open a new order of conditions, but because of, you know, ordering land, would we be adding additional orders?
No, so you won't be adding any additional orders, but one thing that the commission should consider is if there's any different conditions they want to impose as a result to this, compared to what was included in the original order of conditions. So I will review what all the conditions are and come up with my recommendations for potential changes, but if you all have the time to look at them, that'd be helpful too.
So
So,
you can send us
Yeah.
the old order
Oh,
or the existing order.
yes, yep.
Is there parking lot to the north brand new?
Yes, so this parking building here is the new, that is new, and then also a connection to the rail trail to a sidewalk that would connect to Ferry Street. So you're gonna have a, you know, pedestrian connection all the way across to the.
Is there an increase to the impervious area on?
Nope, so from the previous
Yeah.
application to this application, there's,
Even with the new parking lot?
we have all the, we've documented all the areas and previous areas.
Just, yeah.
I mean, it's almost the same.
I'm
It's
just trying to
essentially the same.
understand why there would be an increased disturbed area before it was going to be disturbed for a parking lot, now it's going to be disturbed for a building.
Associated
Same
with,
building.
yeah, it's the same building. I mean, if you look at the site, the entirety of the site has been previously disturbed. It's
Right.
more along the back area here pushing into this.
That's the
at
increase in the
back, yeah,
disturbed
at the
area.
back.
And so what do you need the compensatory storage for? Maybe you explained it already, but now my mind is catching up to,
That's what I'm trying.
yeah, so,
So there was a certain volume, so the way, well, compensatory storage, there's a certain volume under existing conditions. It's like a bathtub,
Right.
right? And then you put, you know, large stone in the bathtub, the water fills
Sure.
up. So essentially the building is that stone. So in order to give back that same volume, you have to work, you have to compensate for that volume. So those other buildings that were here
Mhm.
are the buildings that are being removed, so that's the volume we're giving back, is by the elimination of those, the existing buildings that were done. That were the way the regulations are written is that before a certain date, any buildings in existence, which these buildings were, you know, actually considered not part of the floodplain.
so in this, so the building that you're taking out, that's a huge volume that you're taking out of the floodplain, right?
Yeah.
And then since this building is like up high and has parking underneath, you're putting it back, so that's much less
That's volume.
volume. So then is there other grading that's taking up more of the volume that you remove from the floodplain through removing the building? And is that parking lot sloping down here, or what is that volume?
So the floodplain has in this area, because there's different zones to a floodplain. There's Zone A, which doesn't have a flood elevation associated with it. But then there's the Zone AE, which does have definitive, it has, documentation with analysis done by the Army Corps that assigns a flood elevation to any given site within a floodplain under zone 8E. On this particular site, the elevation is 122.3. Elevation 122.3. Coming down the ramp, 122 is right here. So anything down below, essentially this corner here, is going to be within the floodplain associated with that elevation 122.3. Okay, so this, and then the first floor of this parking garage. So that bathtub, the top of the bathtub, just for analogy, is 122.3. So you don't have to compensate for volume above that elevation, but obviously you have to compensate for volume below that elevation.
Yep. Did you say that there will be an addition of a wall above the wall along the edge of the river, though?
I think Mike just mentioned that there's going to be a.
Yeah, it's whatever, if something gets damaged in the granite construction, there's gonna be basically pictured as like a bollard, but it'll be a wall, concrete wall, 42 inches for safety purposes.
Won't that keep the floodwater from engaging the floodplain, the
No, it's a
compensatory
slope.
floodplain?
So the wall would end, yeah, so you need a hydraulic connection between the two elevations.
Yes.
In order for, as this, as this water rises, it needs to be hydraulically connected so that water can get to that elevation.
Right.
And that is down here at the end where there's currently an old bridge that's just kind of a few steel beams, I think.
I see. Is that shown in the detail somewhere or something, or the extent of that wall?
Not the wall, I don't think, not on the site plan, anyway.
Okay. I think we'd like that just to sort of show.
So where the wall ends, yeah.
Yep, that would be good.
And how wide the access.
One of my general comments is, I think this makes sense kind of as an approach. The one important item with protecting streams and resource areas is keeping shading consistent, and this will take shade away from the canal and open it up to a lot more sun. So I'd be wondering if there's any way to get some plantings, trees, or any kind of green along the side of the canal to help provide shading in some way. And I know it's a really tight site. I know it's just a friggin' building now with no natural habitat value whatsoever. But I'm just looking for a way to keep some shading
The
there.
canal is pretty deep itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, does have essentially two gigantic walls on either side.
Yep.
We can see where we can fit a couple more trees. We do have a couple trees shown there at the sidewalk, right up against it.
Yeah. And I mean, it looks pretty tight in terms of parking spaces and aisles and sidewalks and all that sort of stuff. But if you could think about it, come back next week with thoughts. I would appreciate that. I don't have any other comments or questions right now. I may kind of put back into things a little bit for the next meeting. Maybe I can come back with some more, but I think on the face of it, to me, it makes sense. You know what everybody else thinks.
I think that makes sense. Just one question, and this is not the project under discussion, but on the west side of the canal, which is the other project that you're working on, that is a multi-story building, which is, I think, due for renovation under that part of the project. But that would also offer shading to the canal from the west. So, really, we're talking about increased exposure from the east only in this respect.
Right. Correct. So
Not by much though, because the building's still gonna be there.
And that was kind of my next point.
right. So there's still, but and you're at much lower elevation. There's still, the white, there's still another building and then this this building, but
I,
it is two-story building that's up against the canal too.
but I agree with Dan's comment that it would be, if you could noodle on this in the intervening time, that would be great.
Maybe you could put ends with ivy.
Can't mind
it. Going the opposite of the way.
It'll keep people.
The additional sunlight's not gonna be terribly that much more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is, I mean, I believe the canal, the water is set.
Cassie, do we really care about what the old plans were, or are we just treating this as a new?
I think that it could be helpful to consider the old plans in terms of what conditions the commission required last time
Yeah.
and how those may relate. And then certainly the stormwater system, since it's pretty similar. But it is a new project. It's a new project. You should consider it as its own item. But maybe there's, things you can glean from the previous decisions made by the commission, certainly the designation of the canal, probably being the most prominent one in terms of its jurisdiction related to it. And one thing I'm realizing also, so this is also consideration for the stormwater permit, right? Because this project will have a SWIP and we'll do all those things underneath the city ordinance. And I need to reach out to Dan Murphy for comments and a bond amount, I'm realizing. So if it's very similar, the bond amount might be pretty similar again.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of remaining pieces that I'm realizing, so.
There are bond, first board,
Yep, there were 2 bonds received for each project.
but I mean, we already have a bond for this project.
Not yet. We haven't actually received it because they never started this one. For the project that's associated with this permit never started. So when they come to close it out, that's the kind of closeout they're going to get is we didn't do it. So we'll just close it. But as a result, we're not holding the bond yet for this project. So
Was there a bond for track 2 for the old one?
both track 1 and 2. Yep.
So we have to give that bond back?
No, so what I'm saying is that we've not track 1 required bond. We got it.
Yeah.
We gave it back. Track 2, they never started, so they never gave us the bond.
Oh,
Only if they were getting started, but they have to give it to us. So we have nothing to give back. But we should make sure that the bond amount is still either the same or however it might need to be changed. So I'll get that information from the city engineer.
So, what Dan and how we're talking about the canal and the shading and plants, is there a way to get photos around that area, just so get more?
Yeah, they probably, I think I have. It was funny because I couldn't really walk on the bridge because it wasn't entirely safe. So I went down there, got some pictures and got out of there, but I can try to get more pictures come out. Or if you guys have photos, that'd be helpful if you can send them along.
We have drone photos of it.
Oh, sweet.
I can bring that. Or that wall was collapsing, right? Or
Motion to continue.
Okay.
Yes,
To August 14th.
to August 14th at 6.
I second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Commissioner Carr, Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks. Aye. Commissioner Blue.
Aye.
There, motion passes.
See you
Thank
next week.
you. Yeah, I'm just curious why bocce. and not-
Yeah.
Is that gonna be public, bocce court? And like,
Why not?
Oh, Lord.
Volleyball.
Football's loud, that's the problem. Anyways,
Awesome.
all right, so the next item is related, I guess.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
We're continuing that too.
Right,
So
so,
just want to make sure there's no comments or anything.
For the COC.
For the COC.
Well, I guess we should open it formally, so
All right.
do the whole thing.
so request for specific compliance, one industrial lots LLC, 1 Perry Street, check 2, Mass DP filing 151-299 Perry Street, Middle Development Project map 135 lot 2, expires December 11th, 2024. And you are still here to represent this item.
Yes.
Motion to continue.
I just-
August 14th.
Yes, that will be the result. Just want to make sure if there's anything to address before the next meeting, take a note, make sure it gets addressed.
So the requirements are that we do a site visit, which we did at the same time on the 12th of July, to kind of confirm that no work had started. And my assessment is that no work has started. I feel that's correct. interpretation of what's happened at the site thus far. So I
And then
recommend,
you
yeah.
get us a better sense of the connection with
The hydraulic
the
connection.
hydraulic
Yeah.
connection, and that you consider planting more trees.
So that was for the previous
That's
item.
for the previous.
I made notes of that, but this is a separate item just returning, closing out the old order of conditions.
I thought he was asking about the previous.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think he was wondering if there were any comments about, I don't know, this item. Sorry. I know, fair.
I just want, so that when
Yeah.
we come back, we're not just like, hey, we have this question and we can't close it out for whatever reason. Like, if there's any questions, like.
I don't currently have any questions. So there's been no, well, now I'll ask a question. So there's been no demo, no really nothing happening over there. Just,
We'll wait till next week.
yeah. All right. Do I hear a motion to continue?
Motion to August 14th at 6 p.m.
Second.
Giving it to Hal.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Carr.
Aye.
Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Weeks. Aye. Commissioner Whitmore. Aye. All right, motion carries.
Hey. And you're still,
Thank you for waiting.
he's up for the next one. He's still, yeah.
Thank you for.
Loudville EO. So, commission, I'd ask that the commission take out of order item
Everyone's on vacation,
6E. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, everyone's on vacation this week, so. We're filling in.
So if someone wants to make motion to take item 6E out of order, that would be my recommendation.
Do we have anything on any of the other?
We do, but
Oh, we do.
but there's just not people here to talk about them. So just in the interest of his time, and then I wanted a person here present for another item. So,
Make a motion that takes the,
Well, we have a commissioner in the back.
oh, wait.
Can you go through the other items in 30 seconds or less?
Really quickly? Not really. They're all a little involved. No updates for 93 Northampton Street until August.
CFM complete automotive update for that. Update for 37 South Street.
Nope.
Update for 146 East Street.
Yes,
Okay.
but I'd like to do it
All
after.
right, do I hear a motion to take item E out of order in the enforcement actions?
Sure.
make a motion to take item 60 out of order.
Second.
Roll call vote, Commissioner Carr,
Aye.
August.
Aye.
Weeks. Aye. And we have more.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, you're here, because you're with, he's with our Levesque Associates. Like if I can. Excellent. So just to kind of, if I can refresh the commissioners. So basically there's 3 aspects to this enforcement order. One is the sediment removal. The second one is the slope restoration and kind of plantings down in the sediment removal area and this kind of restoration plan. And then the third one is in-stream impacts. Just as a quick update for the sediment removal, I was out there when they were doing the sediment removal after the flood for the week of the 11th, July 11th. And they did 3 days of removal. I was present throughout those 3 days, kind of visiting and coming back, certainly at the beginning of each day and the close. And we would discuss, here's how we want it removed. Here's what we want to avoid. Here's a good way to tell how you've gone far enough. Commissioner Busa was also able to come out with me one of those days and confirm my interpretation of how when they've achieved that removal. Overarchingly, that all is to say that is my recommendation to the commission that they consider the sediment removal portion to be completed. Essentially about 15 piles of new material were able to be gathered of varying sizes, but pretty big. I would say that a big amount of material was removed, so it was definitely worth it to do the second go. But in most areas, it was almost essentially completely removed. In some locations where there's more densely vegetated, there was more of an appearance of kind of sporadically mottled with sandy colored areas, but you were getting diminishing returns of removing that material and not impacting the root systems below and losing material that is original material. So, I took pictures of all this and I explained it to the chair. And essentially she agreed with me and was felt comfortable with my assessment of that. And so my recommendation to the commission is to consider that portion of it completed
For the sediment.
for the sediment removal.
It looks pretty wet still on your site.
It should be wet down there, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm curious if they got it vacuumed up before it poured Wednesday night.
they did. They were able to get it vacuumed up. Was it Thursday night? I think. No, excuse me, Thursday day. But it was before the next big rain, essentially. They were able to get it vacuumed, but as a precautionary measure, at the end of the day before that, they consolidated it to one pile and wrapped it in enclosed it in its own tarp. Yes, so I feel confident that was contained.
You can go back. That's,
Not since the vacuum truck came in. I was there when they finished after vacuuming everything up. I've not returned since then, because I've considered the removal to be complete. And if more of the material kind of washes away, that might even be okay, better to remove it. I don't really know, but that might make more sense once we talk about the in-stream stuff. But that was kind of a piece of it that I wanted to see if the commission agreed with that assessment and felt comfortable kind of just saying in the record that piece is done. It's up to you guys, obviously.
you really were comfortable.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm agree.
Thank you. Okay, cool. And then now the next piece, there was a number of things that the commission requested be changed about the restoration plan and the slope work at the last meeting. And so Felipe was able to present that.
Yes,
Yeah.
so this plan that you have in front of you here has those changes incorporated into them, and kind of run down a summary list of them. There was a note to be added that the plantings along the hillside, there's no here, all plantings on hillside shall be native live stakings and not rooted saplings so as to minimize disturbance to the fabric lips. Those are the plantings that would go along the lip portion of the decoration. That's on the detail here. There was a note about rubber track equipment that had since been removed. I believe it was 4 here that it's no longer there. And then in the same note was to add equal to or greater than the 0.25 inches of precipitation, which has been added here. There was a request to provide the expected life expectancy of the erosion of the matting that would sort of create the lift. We have updated the note to specify, or the note does specify North American Green SC 150. Well, it'll be SC 150 NB, which is, they both have a 24-month, a little, a 24-month life expectancy before it, it degrades. Yep, before it biodegrades. Next note was to increase the proposed soil list from 6 to 12 inches, which is in the same note, and then remove the pine bark mulch from the planting details. So we replaced the mulch with 3 inches of topsoil adjacent to those plantings. So those comments have been incorporated, and it's I think we're here to just agree that the comments have been incorporated into the plan, and hopefully come up with a final stabilization of that slope so that we can get that started here.
I can add to the commission that at the end, and I see at the end of the last meeting, the commission was like, if we were able to get this beforehand, then I could confirm that all those things were on there. But basically it was submitted pretty close to before the meeting. So I was like, well, I might as well come and explain it here to y'all, to yourself. So, but Deb, did you have a question?
Yes. Can you tell us what the live stake plantings are? What it consists?
Yeah, what the actual plantings are. So those would be upland plant species. There is a VA, which are maple leaf viburnums, TC, which are eastern hemlocks, and just those sort of scattered throughout there, and then also Christmas ferns sort of scattered in between all of those plantings up on the slope.
So I mean, for the slope,
Yeah.
the live stakes,
Yes.
you're putting in the hemlock.
So how many are there? There's 3 of those hemlocks. So maybe the hemlocks are not wide staked because what I don't want to be able to do that.
It says, there's note here, all plantings on hillsides shall be native live stakes and not rooted saplings so as to minimize disturbance to the fabric lips.
So I mean, it's just the age or the size of the what I think.
Maybe we should talk about this. So a couple of things. So live stakes really can only be dormant planted. And I don't remember what we talked about last time. So that would be probably coming back in the like winter or early spring to live stake it after the fact. But yeah, they're only available for certain species of root. And I don't know.
I verified that the species.
Yeah, it's tricky because it's shady and
But shady down there. I don't know how big this afternoon.
yeah. I would comment that I forget if it's plugs or tubulings is the word for like the little plants that you can just kind of stab in.
Didn't we do that for the hemlock?
Not sure, I can't remember either.
Oh, on Loudville,
Yeah, I don't remember.
the other there's the flow for on Loudville.
Painful.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, I guess like on the whole, this seems good, but and maybe it could start, but we just would want to like a little bit better understanding of the plantings.
Yep.
Yeah.
Plus hemlocks are kind of on their way out as a species. They're all dying out. So probably not the best thing we can do.
And they need to be non-invasive.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe elderberry.
I know, I think for whatever, in the SWCA report, there was some kind of recommendation on plantings potentially given that might have helped inform this list.
Ryan would be able to
Yeah.
definitely speak definitively to those.
You have.
To those, I'm part of the detailed conversations of the species.
Yeah.
Didn't Julie ask for a test? Or plan
Yeah.
for the slope?
Plantings was one item we were concerned about last time. We were concerned about puncturing the fabric to plant. But I think so. Like to me, it seems like everything's good except we need a little more thought in the planting part. That's what drag this out before, but that's tough. It's really tough with shady conditions and all the different constraints.
Did you guys start the excavation yet?
For the slope stabilization.
No, yeah, they need to get approval of this plan before they can start that.
So does that mean we're by waiting on the plant species identification that we're putting off approval for another 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah,
Can they start their restoration even though the plantings are approved?
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one thing too, if you guys are, I guess maybe if you can figure out what kind of information you would want to approve the planting list, I can just ensure that I get that. And once I receive that, or also I can kind of reach out to Julie individually because she does have an expertise in plantings, or like it seems to be that she has expertise in that. Just get her opinion on it. I don't know. It's up to you guys how you want to pursue it, but it's a good point, Sarah. Yeah.
You just don't know what livestock, what species.
No, I think it's more just they've presented a list of species to use here,
Mhm.
but it's just, is it appropriate? Does the commission like that list? I think it's a good list for what species to do. So
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
like it says live staking,
Yeah.
and then the species list may not do. with it.
oh, okay.
So, I mean, I think I'm okay with constructing the lifts that they're shown and then we kind of talk about the plantings. We can still talk about the plantings after. And if it, like, we were concerned about puncturing too much of the fabric to plant, plant like,
Yeah, but
Planet
rooted,
plants.
like a rooted.
yeah,
Right.
but if they're like little, so live stakings, they can puncture without too big of an issue, and then little like plugs, 2 lengths could probably puncture, it's no problem. So I think that's where my mind is.
So, yeah.
That's what I would prefer, that we go
In the
ahead and
minutes?
approve the restoration. Slope restoration plan,
I would feel like, yeah.
sort of the understanding that maybe we working on the plan.
It seems like it's definitely a way the commission can go about it. It can be like, you accept this plan, except for the planting list conditional approval. We want to get more information on that. But you can go ahead and start the excavation work, especially since the planting won't necessarily be done until all that's completed anyways, right? Sounds like?
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
Eric? Do I hear a motion to conditionally approve the slope restoration plan, with the planted species and, type of plantings to be confirmed, to be proposed by the applicant and confirmed later?
in the time.
How do you want us to?
You can say so moved. You can say so moved.
So moved.
So second.
Do I hear a second?
So second.
Okay. All in favor, roll call vote. Commissioner Carr,
I,
Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks.
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Whitaker.
Okay, great. So what I'll do is I'll email like a summary of this to everybody because they have that big group
Yep.
thing going on. And basically it's all, they got to figure out when they can start doing the work, but you'll basically be good to go.
They're ready to, yeah. That's all right. So,
That's great.
as soon as they get,
Agreed.
okay, that's certainly,
And then the next meeting is August 14th. So try to, if we can plan to have those planting information and kind of like maybe supplemental information, just kind of justifying that they're native and this is why they're going to work here and why they work as live stakes generally, but all in an email kind of summarizing all
We
that.
just approved it for this, the slope. We're still gonna talk about the in-stream.
Yep, that's the next piece. Yep, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so kind of an overview about the in-stream stuff. Let me stop sharing this. So the new piece of information, last meeting we talked about how the chair and I had a meeting with Scott Jackson, who's a professor at UMass Amherst and is particularly knowledgeable about wetlands and impacts to wetlands and things of this nature. He did not recommend, or he kind of explained that even if there was sediment that went into the stream, the best course of action is to allow the stream to kind of like self-heal, as it were, and not conduct any work or any like action in the stream to try to remove that sediment, just because that'd be more damaging than helpful. He talked about potential, what you could do instead of that was try to establish, and he also explained about how it would be really hard to set a standard to determine what the impact of that sedimentation entering the stream was on the population and the wildlife habitat and the water quality, because we don't necessarily have base data before to kind of compare it to. So it wouldn't be clear if we were making them make changes that were based off of what happened or based off of just how it was before. So, kind of cautioned about that and making changes in relation to that. So he had suggested potentially, things the commission could ask for is like maybe like an assessment of the overall health of the stream or an assessment of what could be done to improve the stream. And then it's up to the commission if they want to then go even further and require them to execute that action of one of those actions that might be determined through that assessment, or maybe just doing an evaluation of like the invasives on site and doing an invasive removal, kind of similar to what happened for Tasty Top in terms of keeping that crossing for a time. The commission was like, okay, we'll do all this invasive work to kind of offset that remaining. The new piece of information, and then the last thing that's mentioned is like, well, let's take a look at the area. What are the conditions in the stream now after that flood? Because at that meeting, we didn't know yet what it was like on site. I went to the site, a number of times, and I tried to kind of walk up the whole stream area as much as it was possible for me to do outside of where the violation explicitly occurred. It didn't seem like to me that there was major changes in the meander or like super big changes that had happened. That might be something that the commission will want fixed or something. That I would say didn't really occur. So it seems pretty unchanged in my opinion, but I can go out and get more pictures. We can look at them now. Yes, Deb.
Was it still turf?
Yes.
So from the pictures, all you see is what happened.
Right. Well, yes. Yeah, I think so. I just double check. I probably, yes, though. I would be surprised if it wasn't because when you saw when it was really flooded, it was all turbid water. And then as it receded,
From the pictures.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
yeah. Yep.
saying.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then when, Garrett Stover spoke about it, he was saying how the water used to be crystal clear.
Mhm.
So,
kind of highlighting that from the storm event, the stream kind of from these events will typically become turbid for a time as a result of these major events, which I think is kind of typical of streams potentially. So, but on an average basis, yeah, it probably runs pretty clear, average. But after these crazy events, it'll run turbid because so much runoff came from so many different areas.
So what's the new update?
So the new update, in addition to that, of kind of seeing that, in my opinion, there wasn't a major change from the flood, is that I also had reached out to Mass Wildlife to see if I could get if they had any data about what the status of the stream was before this violation occurred. And they said that they do. And they got back to me, a gentleman named Jason Stolar. Oh my gosh, I'm going to.
So much.
I know, it's crazy. Jason Stolarski is a PhD. He's the aquatic biologist for Mass Wildlife. And he was able to provide basically like data of what fish they found there. The highlight being that there is slimy sculpin, which is not a listed species. He's like, that's pretty notable. It's kind of rare. Like it's not something that's commonly found. Yeah, you would know. And then it's like a tiny little fish, right?
Oh, it's a fish.
It's a fish.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this would be a trophy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a mold.
The data that he gave me is all fish from them like going out there and trying to see what they could find. And so he said that was notable. It's also noticeable that there's sea lamprey found there, which is like, that's not typical. So it's also just kind of noteworthy, at least for this. Yeah. There are many parts of catadromous species. So they will come up, excuse me, they'll come up and then they'll return. So it's not like never heard of, but in that stream, he thought that was particularly noteworthy for this stream.
this was before this
Yes.
happened?
The data that they have
The data.
from, I think, definitely before this happened. No, it's like 2019. It was like 2019 and maybe better. So he shared it all with me, but I don't know if it's worth it getting in the weeds. Because I wanted to summarize what he kind of said, because I told him the whole story, explained what we were trying to figure out. And he agreed with Scott Jackson in that, like, you really don't want to do any work in the stream. That's something that should be avoided. You shouldn't do that. But he kind of took it farther and was like, I don't really necessarily think it'd be a good idea to rewood the stream or really change anything substantively in the stream, because you don't know, if that's going to have a positive effect or not. And that just generally, he was kind of thinking like that's really big changes like that, like putting more wood in there or trying to create habitat, kind of recommended avoiding it. So he was kind of leaning more towards maybe an invasive, removing invasive, because that's always a good thing. He mentioned that he was more concerned about potential, changes in temperature to the stream because it's a cold water fishery as opposed to the sediment, because sediment, again, will naturally enter the stream periodically. So he was kind of more concerned about changes in temperature, what we can do about that.
Just from global
I guess from global warming, but maybe also potentially from the event. But again, what we could do about that now, it's hard to say. And he cautioned about this basin, got to make sure it functions right so that there isn't overtopping of the basin of this warmer water, but that doesn't seem like it's ever come close to doing that at this stage. So confirmation that the stormwater basin is right will happen regardless through our certificate of compliance process. But all of that is to say that he seemed to lean towards this kind of, if the commission wants to do another element to kind of compensate for this technical pollution that did occur, maybe invasives would be the best way to take it. So I don't know if the commission is prepared to make a decision on this tonight. Just was more information to give you. I'm happy to reiterate again when the full commission is here. But yeah, definitely.
I have some questions. So, how long did they say it would take the work to correct itself?
They did not say. Yeah.
And would PCD be involved with any of the remediation or decisions?
It's up for you guys to decide.
Are they of other things?
Correct. If the commission wanted to try to have some of the work happen on the abutting property, we certainly would need to have, I would think, the permission from PCT to do that.
And then in your pictures, the surrounding pictures, so the banks are damaged?
I wouldn't say that the banks are damaged.
Because I remember Julie mentioned that
So,
banking was damaged. but
yeah.
I don't know if it was the surrounding area or brook area. that
So-
the sedimentation went.
There's the area where like the base of the slope and all the sediment accumulated. And then there were 2 points where at the day of the site of the violation, that I discovered the sediment was entering the stream. One was an area where it was kind of traveling along and then entering, and resulted in kind of like a 3 or 4 inch rivulet had been formed, which could be considered damage to the bank. But I don't know if that rivulet was there before, because it did seem like there was like runoff generally went along that way. And then the other way that sediment was entering the stream was it seemed to just kind of be seeping through the ground and like entering the stream, because there was no clear traveling of the water, which was actively happening around me. But in that location, he was just kind of clouding out of the side of the bank. So there was no damage that I could see there, but that was a point at which this turbid water and sediment was entering the stream. So, my opinion of where it was actively flowing off the bank into the stream, there might have been some impact, but it's hard to determine what if that was new. And then the other piece of it is it was so small that, like, do we really want them to go down there and put in equipment and try to do work down there? Because from the recommendations of Scott Jackson and this gentleman from Mass Wildlife, they seem to say avoid doing work in the stream. And if doing work on the bank there for those 3 inches of, I don't want to misrepresent it and say, I don't know what the exact size of it was, frankly, but I don't know. I wouldn't recommend doing work there.
And stream banks are changing off anyway.
It probably changed since that last.
It probably has. Since the flood.
And if we don't have any proof that it was damaged.
The surrounding pictures that you took, so one bank side looks like a normal bank side. The other bank side looks like a muddy, slashy beach area that just goes right into the water. Is that part of the sediment?
In my opinion, it didn't seem like it was accumulation of sediment there. It seemed like it was kind of flowing through and entering, the turbid water was entering there, and most of the sediment had accumulated in the area at the base of the slope. I think if I'm understanding you correctly.
Well, it's in your surrounding pictures.
Yeah.
So the water's coming down. This side of the bank looks like a green, mossy, full bank. The left side, it just looks like a muddy, slashy kind of mess that goes right to the water's edge.
Yeah. I mean, let's see if we can find the picture you're talking about, because
There's in the surrounding pictures.
Yep. Okay, good. And I've just pulled that up. And so, it's different conditions at different points in the stream. So I don't know if you're talking about where the violation water kind of entered of those, I kind of described 2 places that the sediment water that they were generating was entering. Are you talking about the place that I described previously with that rivulet? Or are you describing another part of the surrounding area? Okay. So if it's another part of the surrounding area, gotcha.
It's turbid water, and then the bank is just,
So,
I don't know what it's made out of. It looks like the complete opposite of the opposite side of the bank.
and that,
It
yeah.
depends on where the meanders are, because the water's gonna sort of, have to like scour out on the outside and not on the inside.
And
It's the natural flow.
So I think a piece of that, Deb, is that like the question then becomes, well, so there might be different conditions in different parts of the stream. That's most likely to be expected, right? That it's not a uniform condition at all parts of the stream section. But if they didn't cause that difference.
Oh, I don't know. That's why I wanted
Right.
you to, if you have the picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find it.
I should
But
have wrote down what it was.
well, either way, if they didn't cause that condition, should we be having them do anything? Because it seemed like, are you trying to suggest that they should do something related to that, or?
No, I just want to know if that was from the sedimentation.
Oh, likely not, because I went from where it happened upstream and went upstream. So it's not logical that they would cause any of the conditions.
They have that kind of.
Let's see if we can find the picture.
Pretty natural, yeah, because streams tend to push out depending on how they're bending. They push out in one direction, so one side can look really much more carved out, eroded, and the other side can look
Right.
kind of mossed over.
Yeah, and erosion is a natural process
Right.
that does happen. So, trying to see if any of these pictures look familiar. I'm sorry, it's like small, but
Start at 51, and then at 50.
what?
51 ending.
So that, okay, I'll try to get there because it's hard to see. But this is kind of like, Deb, is this kind of the thing that you're talking about where like, you know, one side is pretty cut and this, it's a slow slope?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the pictures. So the right side, as you can see, is
Yeah.
filled, but then the left side just looks like a splashy,
Yep.
muddy. So I didn't know if that was part of sedimentation that had
I
been
see.
pushed down
Right.
through and then settled.
I appreciate
on
that.
the bank.
Okay. Thank you for that. That makes sense. Yeah.
I was trying to
No, I'm
explain
sorry.
that.
But so yes, these pictures from the surrounding area, I feel very confident that the extent of where the sedimentation, the accumulated sediment was, which is kind of represented on that plan, you know, it's kind of that bloomed area, is the extent of where the sediment accumulated that was part of the violation. This sediment that you see in this image is naturally occurring, that kind of, it must experience more erosion, might have been washed away a little from the flood. But I think that that was like akin to its natural state. And so that would be there even if this violation had never happened.
I just want to interrupt one
Yeah.
second. Commissioner Carr has to go.
Oh,
So
okay.
We still have a quorum.
We do still have a quorum, yeah.
Okay, so no problem.
sorry.
No problem.
Okay, cool. But you'll just have to vote going forward.
Is this what you were saying?
Yeah, so that is from a previous, that was from like the day it happened.
Yeah.
So if you want to show Commissioner August what that was the only bank disturbance that I had ever seen. So it's like pretty small.
Well, so I was trying to see how this is and then how this was coming down. She had a couple pictures that it was just slid right into the water.
Yeah.
Well, either way, I mean, still a violation. The water is still turbid. I mean,
The current state of turbidity is not from the violation anymore. It's from the flood and sediment from
Okay.
all of the surrounding area enter. But turbid water did enter the stream as part of
Yes.
their violation at that time. I just don't want it to be misrepresented from the pictures that I most recently showed.
Yes.
There's no more sediment entering the water as a result of a breach from this project. But it's true though, some turbid water did enter, and that was kind of like the crux of why the commission wanted to pursue in-stream remediation potentially.
But it seemed like those two guys recommended that the stream will rectify itself and not do anything.
Yeah, I think we were talking last meeting about how the sediment that's moved through the system as a result of the storms coming from other areas is probably dwarfs the sediment that,
I would think so.
yeah, it would only have been, so the sediment that discharged to the wetland, the coarser stuff would have stayed there. It would be only the very fine material that couldn't settle that would be transported. So my guess is that material didn't really settle
Right.
anywhere. It just kept going through the system.
There's a defined like volume, right? So there's the carved portion of the slope. There's a set volume there that they've removed, X volume. So there's only like the delta of a certain amount of soil that can't technically be accounted for.
well, Cassie had pictures of piles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the
Right.
grayish white sediment.
Yeah.
So, but, could you find out too, how long it takes on average for it
Yeah, I
to
can-
clean itself from originally?
I can try to figure that out. I think that it might be very dependent on how much turbid water entered. Like if we had a wicked big flood event, it may even still be turbid there now. I don't know how long that would take. They might be able to tell us, but in terms of the volume that entered the stream from the violation, we can try to ask, but I don't know if it will be determined. But I can definitely try.
I'd be in favor of continuing to next week and we can talk about,
But I think the invasive remediation would probably, it seems to make a lot of sense from obviously the commissioner would want something,
I thought we almost landed on that last week.
We did, but then we were like, what happened after this flood? We should check. And I then happened to get this additional
Yeah.
information. So.
And I think the discussion with Professor Jackson, pushes me in that direction pretty solidly.
The only question I guess is how much area for basic removal.
And do we know what invasives are in the area?
I don't know. Garrett Stover might have information on that.
You did say, I forgot what he
And I
said.
don't know if the SFCA report might be mentioned it slightly. That wasn't requested. She gave a little additional information, so we can look in there too. But then, yeah, maybe that's one of those things is like asking them to tell us what invasives are there. You know, so.
Would it be possible for the applicant and Cassie and PCT to confer and then come back to the commission with ideas? If, maybe for the next meeting or meeting after.
Do you remember how much 93 Northampton Street they
So
proposed?
you're saying invasives.
But I have that. Yeah, it's like a set number.
That could be a starting point.
Discuss it or just invasives?
I mean, I'm thinking invasives personally, but, yeah, I mean, think having, because it sounds like we've spoken to stream expert, that's wildlife that has data on the stream. We spoke to an expert at UMass, and their recommendations are that they're probably there's probably not much. Well, so the damage to the stream is probably pretty ephemeral, and one recommendation from Mass Wildlife is that it'd be better to not really do any work in the stream. So then doing something, it seems like there's not much to do other than look at invasives. So focusing on that moving forward would be good, so that we can just
That or prevent warmer water.
Yeah.
I'm just asking for invasives and if there's anything else that does defy PCT or the chair.
Yep.
And then we would, if it comes to a decision, we would put conditions.
Well, it would be the same as, the other restoration things we've been talking about, but, I'm just thinking that this would be a convenient way to settle on something, because right now, like, we don't know where they're invasives, we don't know who knows. It might just be quicker to have a couple of people, figure something out rather than have a bunch of meetings going back and forth,
Yeah.
That's where my thought process is, I know it would be nice to get this done off our agenda.
Thanks for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked Cassie to look at Northampton Street, what they recommended. for
Generally,
removal.
yeah, because we did a similar invasives removal in lieu of more concrete.
This
so.
was a bigger violation than the other, but at least it's a starting point.
Maybe. I think in terms of stream impacts, crossing is a big impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about that?
Let's see if you and Julie.
Yeah, no, okay. I feel like I know what I need to do next. So hopefully that's helpful. And then you guys, it sounds like I'll send an email tomorrow kind of going over all this to you guys. But next steps for you is like figuring out when we can start doing the excavation work for the slope. Yeah, yeah.
Yep, I'll start figuring that out tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else? Okay.
That is all said. We don't need a motion.
No, no.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do you have any more?
So I have a request
Right here.
for the commission to take item 8 R out of order, because Jeff Bagg, the city planner, is here to talk about. Yeah, he's raising his hand. He's here. I'm gonna give him permissions. Hold on, Jeff. Okay, I added you as a co-host. You should be able to like turn on your camera and do all that good stuff.
Motion to take item
yeah.
R out of order.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
All those in favor, do I have to vote myself now?
You do.
Commissioner August. Commissioner Alex. Commissioner Whittemore. Aye. Commissioner Buttrick. Aye.
So, okay, hold on. This is for item, if you can read it.
So City of Easthampton, 96 East Street, stormwater permit only, stormwater management system. Can't even talk anymore, but stormwater management system associated with the accessible trail map 111 lot 32 expires 6/29/2024. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Fascinating meeting. I've been listening for a while, so I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's good. I think this is easy, and technically the request is for the commission to find a couple changes that we need to make to the stormwater management system as minor. There's a condition, it's number 4 of the permit, that I would take responsibility for, not really realizing that there was kind of this step in the process for the commission to see minor changes. I'd be asking you to consider this a minor change, but the trail is really popular. It's highly utilized, and it's been performing very well. And we made one change sort of in the field during, it was actually after construction. The contractor and designer added a small-ish basin at the top of the trail to try to head off some water that had been flowing kind of off the slope. And so we made that change. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that it needed your approval, but they created a new basin, and we were always watching it. And as a result of the July 10th rainfall event that we had, it overtopped significantly and kind of traversed down a hill and then hit the drainage system that was designed for the trail and just sent sort of a lot of additional water down the drainage system, and it malfunctioned, kind of just destroyed the trail basically. I mean, we're not talking about any impacts in any resource areas. Our major impacts that we're talking about is to the actual accessible trail. So after the July 10th rain event, we had another one pretty close after that. And I've been working as diligently as I can to work with the contractor, the designer, the Parks and Rec department, and DPW and Cassie. We've been out there once to try to look at what options we might have to reduce the amount of water that in that one location. So the proposed change that we're involved with the contractor is to create basically an overflow pipe on this one basin. And I did try to make a kind of elementary graphic to show that we would install an overflow pipe that extends. Thank you, Cassie, for pulling that up. So the area in blue was the basin that was created sort of as in the field as a construction change. And then the line going up the screen would be an approximately 120-foot perforated pipe, so it would be mostly underground, and it would daylight on the side of the site, which is basically a restored habitat meadow, and that would be an overflow area that the pipe would daylight, and then there would be riprap in that vicinity, similar to some other areas that are designed drainage for that purpose. So that was kind of the one option. And then recently the designer had recommended on the bottom of the page, the proposed new swale. So when we were out there, you can kind of see the topography. The orange would be this new swale that would get constructed. It's pretty small, probably 4 feet wide by 80 or 90 feet to just connect that basin, the blue basin that was constructed, to that area. You can see the contour lines kind of flatten out. They're really wide. It was a basin that got constructed. So the designer kind of recommended if we can allow some of the water to flow to that basin, some of the water will go to the basin in blue. And then if there is an overflow or a larger rain event, the overflow would then go out to the other side of the property. So in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minor change. But I kind of realized as I was authorizing the contractor to do this, that the permit says that you should see it before we do that. So I was trying to catch up and get to you guys tonight to show you this.
And so just to add, just kind of a reminder that this project it's a stormwater permit only project, that the Conservation Commission only issued a stormwater permit. There's no jurisdictional areas under the Wetlands Protection Act here. There's no wetland areas here. And this is proposed as a fix because when this crazy rain event happened and caused the trail to wash out. It'd been holding up pretty well for some pretty good rain events to this point, but this big rain event was just too much for that basin. It kind of just travels right over the edge and causes just, things to wear away. And then all kinds of stuff to happen. So I have pictures I can show you guys too to get a better idea. But yeah, that's where it's at.
So why was that basin added? Just so help us catch up here. Was there like a, like the project didn't really add much impervious cover anywhere, and it didn't really change. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'm wondering why the basin was added, and just in the context of the relatively minimal project that occurred.
The first like blue area,
Yeah.
that's existing. So,
Right.
Jeff, if I can,
Yep, sure.
my understanding of why it was added was to try to avoid this problem in the beginning. And it kind of helped, but it seemed like it wasn't enough for for these really big rain events. Because there was already experiencing like erosion and then issues of water traveling down and then along the trail causing it to wash away. And so try to stop that from happening. I guess that was why that was added. But it's not enough. I don't know, Jeff, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think, we found ourselves in a situation where the designer said it was going to be designed one way and the contractor said they built it to that design. And then when we brought them out there, they didn't agree. And so because the topography didn't match up and the contractor said they built to what the plan said. So, that basin that's on the bottom of the page is just the big bulge in those lines that did get constructed, but the water doesn't currently get there. It's shifted over slightly to where the blue basin was built. And I think if Cassie has some pictures, I think it's worth showing, right? That's a field and it has been planted in the wildflower meadow mix and that's fine. But right at the back of that blue basin is a wood line and it goes down a hill. You can see the topography lines, it shoots downhill. And what has happened is it overtopped once or twice and then it's created a channel that goes down that hill. And we're not talking about impacting, I just want to say it again, we're not talking about impacting a resource area in this case. We're just talking about how it's cresting that hill and you can see the trail on the left side of the page and it's just getting to that other channel and the water is in a larger quantity than it should be going down there and it's been washing out the trail. So we're just trying to reduce the amount of water that hits that crest. Yeah. And Cassie, I think if you have, I submitted pictures of the trail impact, but I think Cassie has pictures of the meadow on the site, which may help.
Yeah.
Do you have a picture of the basin?
Yep, I have it also.
Where was that? Where was you said there was an area where it's wide and flat in the topography?
Yeah.
Was supposed to be. Where is that?
Oh, I just took it down, but I can, hold on, I can share it again.
Yep. Is it to the south?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me pull it up just to.
I guess I don't know what I'm getting at, but what I'm concerned a little bit about is just looking at the parcels, the private parcel along East Street to the west and kind of not knowing what the topography was. If I'm just concerned about water going down that slope towards those residences primarily. We have had a lot of issues in the past. It was a long time ago. It was probably like Jay and I were probably the only people on the commission at the time when we had a lot of residents along East Street, like with water issues, and they were all like pointing fingers at each other's like gutter downspouts and everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can show at some point, we can show the other plan that was sort of the design plan. I mean, I think that the distance between where this, I guess I would emphasize that it's an overflow pipe. So we're not proposing to pipe all the water out over there. Just when that basin is full, that overflow would go in that direction. And I just was looking at that map. So it's at least 150 feet, of vegetated area to absorb that water. So neither the designer or the contractor seemed concerned with that amount of water getting, it's a giant meadow, which would absorb that additional water.
And I'll show the pictures. Hopefully that'll be helpful. I'm just making a note here.
And which way does the slope go? I'm looking like where the arrowhead is by the, I'm looking where the arrowhead is by the north arrow.
Yeah.
Which way does the slope go down in that direction?
I can pull the other plan back up, but maybe these pictures would be helpful because in trying to show that. So, but it does slope towards the houses, you know, kind of like it's all down the mountain essentially.
Yeah.
So let me see if this is helpful. Okay, this is the bottom of the meadow. There is an existing like old driveway to the original. It used to be like a mansion up here.
Mhm.
When there was a house, this is the old driveway. So starting from the old driveway, traveling back, the tree line and the property line for the people along East Street are behind me in this image.
So
And
is
then
this on the property?
this is on the property of the trail, but we're not at the trail yet.
But is that the little projection where, over there, where the process comes down East Street to the second location?
Yeah, yep,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, there's like two little dog legs
Yep.
that come down. This is one of them, but this is not the main entrance accessible to the public.
Yep.
There's a gate that won't let people through. So the property line and the houses along East Street are kind of to the right in this image along the tree line there is when that's essentially where the property line is. And so up above to the left slopes upward and is a field. And then somewhere up there is, I guess, 150 feet away is where they have the pipe outfall coming, that perforated pipe. So this is walking along. There used to be an erosion control along here, but everything is stabilized and vegetated, as you can see. Kind of looking back towards that other non-public entrance, that driveway where I started. That's like mulch material that was just cut out of the erosion control. This is looking up the slope towards where the trail is. You can't see the trail because it's like flush with the ground. Kind of same perspective, just shifted over to the right a little. So the tree line is directly behind me in this image. Same perspective. Tree line is to the right. Everything's sloping to the right in this image. Okay, now the tree line's behind me, everything's sloping behind. Up ahead, as you can kind of see a little coloration, that's the bench of like the main, there's a wicked sharp switchback essentially.
There are issues here in these photos?
I'll show them to you. We're going to get there. The issues are all just related to the washout of the trail. Okay, so this is some of the eroded trail material, which is associated with that switchback. So right now, what's happening is that it's overtopping that existing basin that's at the edge of the tree line, flowing down, re-entering the existing, swale that's along the trail to try to direct water, but it's overwhelming that area and, sediment is getting added. So it comes to this location where the switchback is and it starts to travel down the slope, towards those houses, but then it also starts to switch back down and keep going down the trail. So, let's see. This is some of the material that's come down to that switchback. The water was flowing towards those houses. It doesn't look like to me that it reached the houses. It all kind of like gathered there and then dissipated from there. This is the switchback of the trail. So that kind of like light gray area is where that was the geotextile fabric that's at the base of the trail. So the trail's been entirely washed away in that area. It's all this kind of like fine crushed stone above it that was compacted, but it's been washed away. And so you can see it kind of wants to travel. It jumps a little and erodes in the center and then rounds the corner and heads down. And it deposited some material over here, but it's kind of carries down into the rest of the system. Just more detail of that cleared where it washed away. And then what I'd like to do is get up to the pictures of where that basin area is, as you can see where it comes over.
You know how much rain came in?
Oh, I should know. I could get that information probably. I have one that goes, what I check to see if, people should be sending me a report is from NOAA. And it goes back like, I probably don't have it anymore. But it was such a significant event. It might be able to find it somewhere. I just looked to see if it's over 0.25, and if it is, then they need to report to me. And like this one was very obviously over, so.
I'm wondering if we know like what capacity that these improvements will have and what kind of storm they'll be able to handle. And also like the perforated pipe, so that is going to be excavated a ways to the outlet. And I guess I'm wondering, if it's perforated, then it could, as water travels along it, it could bringing water out of it to infiltrate it, but it could also intake water from surrounding groundwater. And then that might be, I just don't know anything about the soils in that area or what the groundwater elevation is.
Hmm. I don't know, Jeff, did they speak to that at all, of what the capacity of this would be in the perforated pipe, why that was chosen?
No, and I don't know that we ever really had done the full analysis of all the runoff calculations. So I think it's a fair question. I would like to try to not have to, because so the city is expended all the funds for this project, and so we're trying to do this remedy. I think the question that Dan asked was good. It wasn't clear to me that the entire pipe would be perforated, so I think that would be the question I would like to try to answer is the pipe. What I understood is some portion of the pipe would be perforated, but my assumption was going to be the end of the pipe. But that would I can try to get some clarity on. I think that's easy information to gather. And if Cassie, if you can try, what I was hoping to see is from the top. I don't know if you have anything from the most top point of view, because I think that's the vantage point that we're missing so far. Is just starting at the bottom is not.
Yeah.
It's harder to orient yourself.
Because this is what these pictures that you're kind of flashing through right now is just detailing what resulted from what happened at the top where it overtopped. So I do have pictures from the top. It's just going to take me a second.
Sure.
To get there.
The rest of the trail performed very well. And I think, Dan, you asked about the rainfall event. I think that we, over the course of constructing this, the city has assumed that there could be some impacts to the trail for like a hurricane type event. And that's the nature of the trail that we built could require some maintenance. But the main thing that we observed is that there was a problem area that we think if we could spread the water out, we think we can solve the erosion on the trail. And that's what the contractor and designer were hoping to do.
Should be near the end of these images when I went back up to the top. So
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern is I'm just anxious about, if water doesn't have a place to infiltrate, it can travel surprisingly far down the slope or whatever. So that's my concern is about how to make sure that we're not going to cause an issue at the residents down the slope.
no, almost there.
So Jeff, you were looking for approval for the modifications that presented?
That was the goal. That was the goal is, I wasn't aware enough of the stormwater permit that it required approval before we made changes. So the contractor is implementing some of this. I didn't actually see if they started today, but I gave them approval unbeknownst to that condition. So Cassie, if you stop on that image, so in the middle, approximately in the middle is some stone. That is like the base of the new basin. And in the previous drawing, it was blue. So that was the basin that got constructed in the field. And on the left, you can see at the wood line, there's an area where that water had been overtopping that back of the basin. And so that's the first fix that we're proposing is to raise the back of that basin. And then the designer and contractor agreed that they would put riprap on the back and make it 10 feet so that if it did overtop, it would be spread out rather than concentrated in what we talked about a couple times tonight's rivulets. But that's where this basin is overtopping and it's going into the wood line, which shoots down the hill onto the trail. And then if you can look out into the distance in the far view is where they propose to run the pipe and then daylight on the meadow, which I don't know, Cassie, if you have a picture of the meadow, but.
I do. So detail of that existing little basin that gets overtopped, the angle of it. This is where it overtops and is traveling down, causing this erosion. Better detail of the
Can I
erosion.
ask? I'm just curious what that white
Oh, that's the erosion control blanketing that was put down when they did the seeding, when they first did the grading, yeah. But it's all undermined because of how it's being concentrated in that area. Lots of pictures of that, okay. Okay, so here's the meadow looking, this is the area where they want to direct, or part of the area, so. This is where that existing basin that was part of the original design and exists, but the water's not getting directed towards it right now, that they want to build a swale, directing it to this area. And then I'm gonna need to zoom through to get to where the meadow is too. I know, I'm scared I'm gonna miss something. This site has a lot of like elements. There's so many of those little drainage
You should go
things.
back to this screen. I'm trying to look up.
I know we're close, so. Just slow. Okay, this is looking towards that meadow area. Okay, so kind of to the left of here is, yeah, I'll go back one. This is kind of the meadow. It really like slopes down from there. It's all vegetated. So we already have one location where it kind of enters this basin over here. It's another kind of bowl. The trail loops around this area and then it travels through this pipe when it reaches it and then goes to a stone rip up that's over here. But I'm trying to think if I have a better picture of the slope. I don't know if I have it from above, Jeff. I feel crazy.
That's okay. I think on that, the basin that you were just showing, it is showing up, does show up on the sketch plan, if you call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hear your question, Dan, about the quality of the soils. That's something we can certainly get more information to. I felt conflicted with the contractor being ready, the designer agreeing, and we wanted to make sure that we put some protections in place before we get more rain and the entire trail is destroyed. So if there's some other information that we can try to get the commission for you to feel more comfortable, I'm happy to try to get some more information. So on that map there, Cassie, where you can see the trail loops in a circle, and that there's a basin, and then the pipe goes under the trail and daylights. It's that black area on the drawing there, and that's that riprap catchment area. And we'd be looking to replicate that. I don't know the exact location where the contractor wants to daylight the perforated pipe. So these are all pieces of information I can try to gather. You know, I'm stuck between trying to get the approval and trying to make the contractor have the time to get out there. And then we will have to come back in for the COC at the end of this to show the commission the final changes.
So for a stormwater permit, the project wouldn't get certificate compliance, but the commission would issue like a memorandum like we did for the animal hospital recently, saying that it was done essentially.
That blue area says a basin headed. What does that mean?
It's there. That's that area. This is that kind of that riprap area that I was showing in the pictures. It's there right now. That blue section, it exists.
What overflowed?
So kind of what I was trying to show from the pictures is that.
Where on the map?
Yep. So I don't know if you can see my cursor. You probably can't. But at the edge of the basin, and then it travels down where you can see all the lines get wicked close. That's where it goes down.
So the new basin overflow.
Exactly.
Can't make it bigger. So
that's kind of what they're asking you to do. Essentially, is you add a swale to direct it to this area to the south, but then also add a perforated pipe to kind of direct it over here, and then it would land in another riprap basin, or not like a basin, but like an outfall, I guess, to try to disperse it around, and then it would travel down the rest of the vegetated meadow area.
Well, that's what they proposed to do. Money.
I'm just wondering where all the water's coming from. And I know, like, how did the project interrupt, you know? I don't think the project is generating all of this new stormwater that's ending up in this basin. I'm thinking the basin's just interrupting some kind of flowage that was happening, or, you know, and it's coming down and getting on the trail.
Yeah, the designer thought, so on this picture here, on the right of the map, there's the little loop, and it's, if you could read it, it says there's a kiosk. I don't know if you've been up there, but there's a kiosk and a picnic table. That little bulb out to the right. Yeah, right there. What has been observed that last storm, one of the Parks and Rec Department people went there, and it was coming off of Mount Tom. So right behind this is the Eversource, has an access strip. And then above that is the actual proper Mount Tom State Reservation. And what they saw was more sheet flow coming from there, crossing over. And then in the wildflower meadow, what the designer thought was that the soil had been pretty well compacted during construction. And that even though there is vegetation in that area, it's still relatively compacted, and that the sheet flow was coming at a higher rate than they anticipated from the sort of from upland.
Is that higher elevation to the right of the basin?
Yeah, to the right, everything is kind of increasing up and then going up Mount Tom and all that.
What's preventing the trails above the basin from washing out?
Haven't experienced it up there. I don't know if it's just the stormwater, the way that it's been graded and designed is functioning correctly in those areas.
Where do we think the directional water is coming from? From where?
So that's kind of what Jeff was trying to describe. This kind of bump out here in the trail.
Right.
The maintenance folks from the Parks and Rec Department were able to observe what seems like sheet flow happening from this area and then down, you know, and it kind of keeps going down towards the basin. Yeah.
I guess what I'm thinking is having, you know, I mean, if it's gonna happen, it sounds like it's gonna happen, but I would like to know where that end of the pipe is pointed relative to like a low areas, you know. Having like a level spreader at the end would be good, but if excavation of the pipe starts, and I mean, groundwater is going to be super high now, probably, right? So if excavation of the pipe starts and like it's all groundwater coming into the trench along the length of that pipe, then I don't think it makes sense to proceed, because it would just be intercepting groundwater and discharging it potentially.
Yep.
Do you know how deep the pipe would be?
I do not. And so the contractor alerted me yesterday or on Friday that they were going to be starting today. I don't know how far they got today. They asked me to go inspect the site tomorrow. I'm going there at 1:00 tomorrow. If you are around, you're welcome to come. But I do not, I think this was intended to, hopefully this is fine to say, but they were describing this as like an infield kind of decision to figure out the best location for it to go. So I'm happy to report back and see if I can gather some more information. I apologize for kind of skipping the step where we were eager to make sure that we could try to get a plan in place. I didn't realize that they were going to start so quickly. So.
I'd love to go, but unfortunately all this rain, it's not helping my visual prospects during the daytime either lately.
I mean, if I could just add one more thing. So if you could see where the dash line, this is an illustration. So this is my interpretation of what has been discussed. The location is not determined yet. But if you look at the orange dash line going up, you can see where the word proposed trail is, the contours go towards the trail. And so they were going to bring the pipe far enough out so that the contours left orienting towards the trail and just oriented down the meadow. Once we get to the meadow itself, the site is kind of evenly flat across. And so that was the intended place to exit the pipe and do the level spreader. If that's helpful.
It says the swale, proposed swale connects two basins. Sure.
Where do you see that? Sorry.
The orange.
Yes. So it connects the new basin to the other basin. So this area to the south of that orange rectangle is where they graded it intentionally as part of the original design to kind of let water accumulate there. But for whatever reason, due to the final grading, that's not happening. And so what they're proposing is kind of two-pronged. Add this orange swale to try to direct it where it was supposed to go, but then also add this perforated pipe to try to catch the excess and go down the other way too. So kind of making it both go away.
I was wondering where the other basin.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, it's just that kind of flat area that the topography lines kind of make clear.
And so that wildflower meadow is in that big void with no contours in it.
Yes.
Where they're discharging.
Yeah, there's pretty much wildflower meadow throughout the entire area, but this big area that I was just talking about, yep, it's all vegetated with grasses and wildflowers. And then the area that feeds into this, similarly so. And then that's essentially what the makeup of the area where the perforated pipe would outlet to as well.
That continue to go downhill. Meadow, it's all flat.
No, it goes downhill. So you can kind of see where how these contours lines are. And if you can imagine, they kind of they curve out and then straighten out along, and just so that it becomes like this kind of flat, straight meadow that extends down towards East Street, essentially. And maybe it'd be helpful if I pulled up Mass Mapper, like aerial imagery.
No, I can see it now. I can see to the left.
Yeah.
Go East Street. Then there's no concern with the flooding heading for D Street with that pipe.
I don't know. I have concerns, I guess.
Well, it looks like a big meadow then.
Jeff, did you say it was roughly 150 feet likely from the pipe to where, or what was it? Sorry. That's
a good question. That's a detail I can certainly get. What I was looking at was just on the page left there, the rear of those property lines that are shown, the East Street properties. I was just looking at the first one was like 70 feet, 30 feet, and another 80 feet. And we're going to be even higher than that. So I was just throwing out a number, but
okay.
The other plan, so there was I actually have two things to say there. I actually am going to need to excuse myself in a couple minutes. I have to put my kids to bed, but there was another plan set that Cassie, you actually sent me today, which was the initially submitted plans. Probably show the full contours, because this was the as-built that I was trying to display from the contractor produced that. Maybe it'll answer a couple questions. At least the rest of that topography should be shown on another map.
Okay.
Yeah, I just found it here.
Okay.
So these plans, so it does show pretty flat across the meadow. Not flat. I mean, it's steeply sloped uphill to downhill, but there's really no
here we go.
drainage features on it. It's pretty even slope, I guess.
Right, like kind of laterally, it starts to go evenly across that side of the property.
This kind of zooms in on that area. You can kind of see where the switchback is in the loop and all that.
So it looks like the original design had infiltration, like I'm looking at the loop there. It had infiltration trenches on the inside of the loop and not those culverts that going across with the level spreaders. Is that right?
That one is an infiltration basin that does have a culvert going across. You can see it just barely on that map that goes under the trail and daylight's on the other side, and that exits onto the meadow. Then that has functioned really well.
Yeah, my understanding is all those little culverts were a part of the original design. That wasn't a new feature.
And actually, in this one, you can see the basin that was constructed right near with that label for S1. But the water is not currently getting there, or not enough water is getting there. So Dan, would one of the questions be some kind of volume and capacity? That I had a note of that might be one question. The other question is whether the entire length of that pipe would be perforated. And then just where does the pipe daylight with respect to the rest of that topography on the hill? I mean, is any of that, would any of that be useful information?
Definitely.
Okay.
Would it not be? Yeah, I'm sorry for not thinking about this faster, but would trying to establish the basin, that low area as proposed, be better, you know? Would it, I'm just looking at the drawings right next to each other. So there was like a 2-foot deep basin proposed here, but it's just like a flat area now. That's what Chuck was saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at that, but the concern was that for whatever reason, the topography that's out there now would be a pretty substantial disturbance, a lot of regrading, a lot of removal of a lot of existing vegetation to make that basin bigger and to capture that. We'd have to reshape that whole stretch. That's kind of the way the designer was concerned with looking at regrading that entire area to form the basin again. I guess what I would like to, I know you guys have been at this meeting for a long time. What I would like to ask is to come back. There will be some action happening, but I think I can gather a little bit of information and hopefully come back to you and make you feel more comfortable that's a minor change.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because I think one of the main things that I would be curious about is where does that pipe daylight? And that may shape some answers about the slope on the meadow. And if it's poorly situated when we go out there tomorrow, we'll talk about changing it. And then just understanding the volume that the designer either used and anticipated coming to that basin. If he can provide me some data, maybe that'll be helpful to justify kind of creating the swale to connect the two and then the overflow.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan.
Okay. I appreciate that. I didn't realize the complexity of this, but I wanted to make sure I came to you guys, as we're doing it at least.
He'd asked us a month ago before all this rain happened and been like, yeah, sure, no problem, right?
Well, it's tricky too. I am kind of curious about the volume and capacity because I just saw that the storm the other day that hit Conway was 8 inches. And there is a realization that this trail is vulnerable to some erosion and impacts from big storms, but we want to try to do the best we can to capture as much as we can. And maybe that's the question. I'll go back to the designer. We probably will have to re-engage with them a little bit to have them help us make sure that we can size it appropriately and that the overflow won't carry too much water.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sticking around to listen to this request. So.
Thank you for bringing it to us. Once you realized the permit condition, I'm almost not heard at this point, but just good.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Great. So I think I'll be back on August 14th at your next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Are we able to work through the rest of this?
I'm gonna try to, honestly. And I think I can, because basically what's left, what we need to do is go back to agenda order item 6C.
Oh, yeah.
I know, but I'm gonna go pretty quick because I only have a few that actually have really substantive pieces. No, we don't have to make a motion. We just return to agenda order. Or I mean, you guys can motion to end the meeting if you like, but I wouldn't recommend it. Okay.
Oh,
So 476 East Street, the update is that I don't have an update except to know that I need to do the site visit I wanted to do today, but got swamped with all this other stuff, unfortunately. So I'm going to try to do the site visit this week and have that information ready for the commission. The update is just that I kind of lost the thread on this one in terms of what's required. There was a series of plantings that were required and then monitoring of those plantings surviving for 3 years is what the commission landed on from the enforcement order.
This is the trees along the.
Yes, sorry. Yes, on East Street, trees along the way. Yes.
oh, did you say what it was?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, someone wants to say it. Yeah, I can say it. It's GNF, item 6C, GNF for Fortalice, 476 East Street, map 158, lot 9, enforcement order 2022-002.
Okay, sounds good.
So more to come, but it's on the radar, and I'm sorry that I dropped the thread on that one. So we'll be doing site visits soon. I'll let you all know.
Okay.
Okay, next item that I have updates for is under ongoing projects.
To know open space updates.
Open space updates. So, we need to do the mowing by August 1st is the information I just got from, Jessica Applin. And if we can't do the mowing by then, that's okay. We want you to reevaluate like how the next treatment is done. I need to communicate with Jay to figure out like, maybe they can do it, but it's going to be wet again. So it made sense not to do it while it was wet. So I just need to figure it out, but I'll have more substantive update at the next meeting, I'd say, in terms of, it's not like all is lost and it's a huge problem. It's just like, we might have to like reconfigure the plan in terms of when we do treatments and such.
Okay, finance updates.
Yes. So, basically I visited all the active projects that like are actively under construction that post all these rain events and like the most recent big flood primarily. So, but the first one that I have notes for is item C, Nashwanik Pond. DP number 151/288, aquatic vegetation management via an herbicide and algicide. They did their yearly treatment. So they reached out with all the pre-construction items and required material. Now I'm just waiting for the follow-up report related to that treatment. Everything seemed nominal and okay. And all the pre-construction requirements were met at the very least. So just need to get that update.
I read they got a new tool to measure the bacteria.
The bacteria? Oh, that's cool.
Oh, okay.
Well, that might be true. We didn't really talk about that. It was more just the main thing is that they need to measure the dissolved oxygen in the pond and make sure that it's at a certain level if they're going to do the treatment, which was the case. The average met that criteria in all locations, and then they needed to repost the signage and give appropriate advance notice, which all those metrics were met. Okay. And next one was Loven Properties. They completed their the project had been paused for a wicked long time. I basically had them redo all the pre-construction requirements because they're now ready to come in. They already completed the stormwater management system and the wetland replication and the road, and all the stormwater management system is all done. Then it paused for a wicked long time. Now they're ready to build the buildings. I made them redo pretty much all the pre-construction requirements to make sure the erosion controls are in place and they're ready and they have a monitor, good to go. The work hadn't even started when all this rain happened, so it's good in that regard as well. And then on Ferry Street, we just talked about that earlier in the meeting. Easthampton School Committee, they want to come for the COC. I got an email from them recently that they are getting ready, and I'm just going to reiterate to them all that's needed, particularly clarity on that rear basin and how it functions and all the details about that. But so just more of a notification that's on the horizon. I didn't see any issues from the recent rain events at the site related to anything. It's pretty much entirely stable, and then everything else has erosion controls around it. So that's coming up on the horizon. Cloudville, we already talked about. 108 Oliver Street, no issues there after the rain events. That's a very small project. It's just a single family home. 99 Mount Tom Avenue. This is the Cherry Street project, no issues there. The restoration area that would have been most vulnerable to erosion after these extreme events did not experience any issues and was mostly stabilized before this occurred. The rest of the site is paved, so wouldn't expect any erosion to exist and enter the stream from that area. Haven't seen any issues with turbid water and exiting the outfall previously. 50 Florence Road, there was an issue. So I did a site visit with Mary Grover of DEP immediately after the flood. When did we go out there? On the 12th of July, because DEP particularly wanted to check on solar projects that were technically active because of past issues with other solar projects, like in Williamsburg, if you're familiar. There was a huge violation that happened there after a similarly large rain event. This site is pretty much entirely stabilized because it's been completed. They just need to come for the COC. But there was an area where there's an issue of accumulated sediment along the erosion controls that we discovered. And basically what we asked was that, within the next 24 hours, clean that out. That's part of routine maintenance that should be happening, and then beef that area up, because I guess they're experiencing some kind of pooling of water in this one area that when you have these rain events, it directs towards that section. That's why we got the accumulation there. They made those repairs in time before the next rain event. But I just recently got the next report after that there was a rain event on the 17th that resulted in failure of those controls again. So they needed to repair it again, and they cleaned everything up on the 18th the next day. I got to go out there again. I was trying to go tomorrow.
Which one? Is
This is 50 Florence Road solar project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They built it.
They've been building it, Mike.
I haven't seen anything. Okay. We haven't been out there in a long time.
We've done a number of site visits throughout the life of the project.
Yes.
You can?
I can, if you want, I can get you a summary of all the times we've talked about it, but it definitely is like something we've been talking about. But this issue is new in that they had to make these repairs. So I just want to go out there again. Now that they've repaired it again, I need to make sure that it looks good. That's my plan, is to go out there tomorrow. And I'll update you all at the next meeting. 96 East Street we talked about. And the last one is the Eversource project, which was happening right on the Connecticut River. That site, based off of reporting that was submitted before the rain events, was that it was pretty much entirely vegetated. They were really close to coming for certificate of compliance. Then this flood happened. They were able to confirm that before the flood, there was none of the construction matting was there, and everything was flooded. All their construction, all their stuff was out of there essentially. So they don't believe anything was lost from the flooding. Now the waters have receded. They were able to submit a report from the 21st of July showing that it didn't look like there was any issues there, but that was the most probably impacted directly by flooding, but it looked like it was okay. That's my update. So you have any questions? I know that was a lot and it's really fast, but.
No questions.
Any, H and J, they still need to be done?
Item H is H and J. H is the pump house demolition. It's not yet closed out on there. Just it's a reminder. It's done. It's all done. They just need to come for the certificate of compliance. It's been done for a while, but it's just wrangling the related city.
They were expired already.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Same story for J, which is the gravel millings. That's covered by the bundled order now, but they just need to close it out. So I apologize. It's been too busy. I haven't been able to actually get it sorted out. General business, if you guys are ready.
Ready?
Minutes from July 10th.
Any comments on the minutes? Does Kathy get comments? Does Kathy do the minutes?
Yes.
Kathy do the minutes?
Deb gave me corrections.
Review, Deb gave corrections. Everyone's good with the minutes?
Yes.
Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes from July 10th?
I move we accept the minutes of the July 10th meeting.
I second it.
Roll call vote. All those in favor, Commissioner August, Commissioner Weeks,
Aye.
Commissioner Whittemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Patrick, aye. Motion carries. And then, has there been anything on wetlands ordinance discussion to talk about today?
I don't remember what the next meeting is scheduled for, but it is scheduled for in August. And then we kind of found 3 or 4 tasks that everyone's going to work on. Tom was going to work on trying to figure out if there are maybe streams that seem to function perennially, but won't classify as perennial based off of the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act. So we were thinking, maybe we should just list those. More details to come on that. Just trying to figure out if we can increase protections to those areas. Commissioner Busa was going to try to figure out, Deb, do you remember?
Perhaps.
And making sure that there is, for restoration projects, that those things are kind of not doubly restricted through our control, through our new ordinance, and making sure that we kind of try to help support restoration projects and aren't too restricted of those, but we need to stay within the bounds of the Wetlands Protection Act, obviously. I was going to find, we're trying to outline each different type of jurisdictional area, what the performance standards are, trying to find the examples from the Amherst bylaw that matches how we've been doing it and put those in and kind of refine that down. And then Commissioner August was trying to work on potentially like habitat, wildlife assessment information and a procedure for that, that we could use. And there is a document that was found issued by DEP on that specific subject. We're gonna try to like incorporate it in some way. So there's a lot going on, but it's still feels like it's kind of, there's a lot more to do. So that's the main summary, but we're still going at it. So.
Excellent. All right, motion to adjourn.
I'm moving that we adjourn. I think this is the July 24th meeting.
No roll call vote. Commissioner August.
Aye.
Commissioner Weeks. Aye. Commissioner Whittemore. Aye. Commissioner Patrick, yes. Motion carries.
Okay, next.
We adjourned at, that's not right. At
9:22.
9:21.
9:21.
I thought you made the motion.
I can make a motion.
I'm going to end the recording, but just to say that the next meeting is scheduled for August 14th.
Oh yeah, next meeting is good as August 14th.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.